Welcome to the next episode of the Appalachian Podcast. I'm your host, Billy Riddle, with me once again, and as always, my co-host, Jeff Taylor. Bodine, welcome back to the Get On Tap Studios.
Woo. 4th of July weekend. Tried not to do a whole lot. Wore out.
This is our 4th of July weekend
Special.
Independence Day special. And for everybody that is tuning in...
Suck it, England.
Yeah, for one. But many of you may be tuning in excited and expecting to hear a Caleb Flores show. Well, we had some technical difficulties for that show. And technically, Caleb was difficult to deal with. He partied a little too hard, starting, I think, the second he woke up when he got back into town. So we tried to pull off the show on Friday. After about 30 minutes, I just axed it. I said, we can't do anything with this. Maybe one day I will release that on Patreon or something for anybody that wants to hear, but I have no earthly idea why you'd want to. I cringed listening to it.
Did you even get any talking in? Was there
a little bit? I mean, there's like 2 or 3 stories in there I might be able to cut out, maybe add to some highlight reel or something, and I could also possibly, maybe cut out 2 or 3 minutes just to highlight what an absolute ridiculous shit show it was. Maybe for a PSA, a service announcement for kids, explain to them why they shouldn't drink all day long in the heat of summer. So, we decided since that show wasn't going to happen, this is another show I wanted to do for a while, and with these kind of shows we're going to do here today, they kind of just pop in my head. And fortunately, these 2 gentlemen with us today were with us this weekend, and they've been on the show a couple of times before. At least one of them has. And so we're going to do like a July 4th kind of deal with some of my Iraq buddies again. So we have back with us for the 3rd time Emmette Bird back to the show. And we also have for the 2nd time, and for the first time actually in the studio, Casey Brannon, better known to many of you listening to Special Ed, is here with us today. So, gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for gracing us with your presence tonight.
Well, thank you for having me back. It's always fun to come in here and hang out with you guys.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me out.
automatically? I want to know the story why they call you Special Ed.
There's too many to.
Can we do it without? Can we do it while being politically correct?
I think.
Sure, you can.
Was it the flat jacket incident that gave me that name?
No. I think the nickname came pretty well close to the beginning of the deployment. There were a lot of things that added up over time that just reinforced.
Well, I think the bottom line was you were so young when we deployed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you were probably the youngest person in the entire company on that deployment, and you grew up on that deployment.
Yeah, I turned 19 when we went over, 20 in country, and 21 right before we came back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you were one of the types that, I don't know if you can still do this or not, but you went to basic in the summer, your junior year of high school, and then went back to your senior year, and then went to AIT in the summer. I guess that makes a lot of sense if you're young. Mm-hmm. If you're in shape. Me at 17 or 21 when I went in, or 20, whenever, I was never in shape to want to go. If I would have had to do all that work just to get out of basic and then reapply myself the following year at AIT, I'd have spent an extra 5 weeks at AIT to get myself back up to date to pass the. So I'm glad I did it all in one hoorah. Because how did you do that? I mean, first off, how do you come back to high school and deal with a bunch of seniors when you're like, man, I've already been to basic training and stuff. You know what?
Hell, I would. See, I came back from basic training. I was in decent shape before I left because I ran track. And then when I came back, I still ran track, but I also joined the wrestling team. And I took them through some of our basic training workouts while we were warming up for practice. And they called me Captain Blood. I would kill them with our workouts that we did in basic training. So that kept me in shape to go back to AIT. And then I was in even better shape when I went to AIT.
Yeah, I was not. But, I made it anyway. That must have been kind of hard going from being like the king of the high school to being the butt of everybody's jokes. But, it wasn't just you. It was So if you've listened to any of our shows before, of course, go back and listen to one of our first few shows, maybe 2 or 3 we had Emmette on, maybe our second one. You know, we kind of talked about a little bit of our deployment, I think, up until we crossed into Kuwait. And then we had another show back in January. We kind of talked about Willie P and that whole crazy day. So, yeah. What was I saying before?
I don't know. I distracted you with his nickname question.
Yeah. Anyway, but
because you had a plan for this episode, and I didn't. I didn't distract it already.
Well, I mean, being Independence Day weekend back overseas, I kind of wanted to go back and talk about that day, and that's kind of what today was all. But that's my thought. I was thinking about where this show was going.
I thought we was going to talk about the Revolutionary War.
We can do all those kind of things. This is a July 4th special.
I'm not a buff on the Revolutionary War, so.
Well, Emmette is probably pretty.
I remember one if by land, two if by sea.
Right.
But no, like when we were much like the Willie P episode, you know, July 4th weekend over in Iraq was kind of a crazy weekend where a lot of different things happened, a lot of wild things happened, and it really started setting the tone for the rest of the war. We'd been there for a handful of times and for a handful of months. And I thought, well, man, that was such a cool day. We can kind of talk about that transition. You know, we were here last time with Bird. Like I said, we worked it up into maybe crossing into Kuwait and stopped there. So maybe this show we can kind of talk about after crossing into Kuwait and up till July 4th. And who knows? I mean, in 3 years, if we're blessed enough to still be doing this show, you're probably going to hear a lot of the same stories overlap. But you're going to get different people in here and different perspectives, and they're going to, you know, remind all of us of different things, which will lead us to reminding different things. But yeah, July 4th in the desert was a crazy week, but
that was a brutal 4 months
leading up to it.
Oh, it's horrible.
Because we talk about T rations and MREs, and that's all we had to eat for the longest time.
That's why I gained most of my weight. I think I was 145 when we went over there and eating 3 MREs a day, 2,000 calories per MRE.
Yeah, but you were working it off, weren't you?
No, we was driving every day.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I think I got up to 200 pretty quick.
Yeah, I lost weight over there because I sweated my ass off. And then, you know, when the fall time got around, I put it all back on because once again we were driving and the food started getting a little bit better. Much better, actually. So
yeah, once the civilians took over the cooking, we all friggin' our mission pace slowed down and we got good food.
Yeah.
And we all fattened back up again. But that first 4 months, I lost a ton of weight because, you know, I was so sick of the MREs and the slop they were trying to pass off as food. I just didn't eat.
Well, the couple times, you know, when we were in Kuwait, and for anybody that does it, to try and paint a picture for you, the best way I can, if you'd ever seen the movie, what's the Marine? Jarhead, right? Really good Marine Corps movie about a Marine Corps sniper. When they were in their desert base or whatever that is, that's a really good depiction of what it looked like for us in Kuwait, like at Camp New York or whatever it was. We just drove out in the middle of the desert for hours, and we finally come up on this place literally nothing around anywhere. But, you know, they did have a chow hall. I would say the food was maybe 1 to 1.5 steps above what an MRE would be. I remember getting a couple of cheeseburgers in there a couple times and a few other things they had, but it was very, like, processed and... do you remember what I'm talking? Do you remember
I don't remember ever eating there.
Yeah, because we
know
stayed there. We stayed there for a good week and a half.
We were, but I was always going back and forth to the port and
You would have had to went there once or twice because it was just right across the way.
I remember going to the exchange that they had there, but I don't remember eating.
It was
there.
just a tent, and it was really hot in there. And you go in there, and they had the little juice boxes and. And everybody in there at every point in time was all full battle rattle and, you know, waiting for that Scud missile to drop VX gas on so you could put your gas mask and Mop 4 and stuff on. And let me just say, what a crock of shit. It didn't take me long to start taking that gas mask and that Mop 4 gear and packing it in the back of my truck, you know, because I was like, at this point, if it hits me, whatever. At this point in time, I'm not going to. You know, even if my mop suit's behind me, it's over anyway. I'm just going to, you know, So I'm not going to carry that stuff with me everywhere I go. And it was just such a pain. And then, of course, in the end, it's like, well, it was all a bunch of bullshit anyway.
Yeah, we'd all died.
Yeah.
We all took them with us on missions, but if you were like me, it was at the very bottom of all my gear.
Yep.
I'd have died trying to get to it.
Yeah, it'd be quicker
And,
just
and
to...
I think everybody was in the same boat as I was.
I don't think we had one hoo-ah guy in the entire platoon that wore his gas mask. And that kind of...
I would have been that guy.
Well...
If you know me, it'd have been like, all right, they're telling me I have to. It's just like automatic.
I was getting ready to say there's a lot of parallels to that. And it's crazy how these days, how everybody reacted to COVID and everything. And just the numbers, you would say at least probably 30 to 50% of people reacted irrationally during COVID. So you would think of a platoon of 100, a company of 150 people, at least a couple would react irrationally to that kind of stuff. But no, everybody would just... I mean, I guess when you get a bunch of Appalachian hillbillies together, like, well, we X gas, hell, I mean...
It has nothing to do with the mask. It has to do with obsessive compulsive disorder, and that ability to just like, all right, I should really do this. And I'm like, okay, I've got to do it or else it would absolutely eat me away.
Billy, you remember the night the chemical alarm went off?
Absolutely.
So we're sitting there, we sleep in these 12-man tents.
Now, for perspective, this is when we were at Camp Anaconda, probably somewhere in July or August,
I was on
next
road.
next
I
to
don't
the fence
remember
line.
this.
Yeah, I can't remember. I don't know if we weren't on a mission with you or whatever.
Yeah, I think
but
we
were just...
And we're talking Northern Hemisphere, so July or August, hot as balls in the desert.
Yeah, it was hot,
Exactly.
and
We didn't have AC by then.
As you were going to say, I'm sure the tents were air conditioned.
and everybody had moved into the Connex boxes except for pretty much me and Casey, because I
Yeah.
was like, I would much rather take my chances with mortars out here
Yeah.
than sleep in a Connex box with y'all stinky mother, what's,
So he's-
night after night. So
What's a Connex box?
it's just you see the they put them on flatbed trucks.
Are they air conditioned?
No.
No,
Okay,
well,
so-
they did put air conditioning in them,
Eventually,
though.
we
Yeah,
got them. We put air conditions on.
They
yeah,
built
they actually
doors on
rigged them
them.
up. They built doors and they put an air conditioner in the door.
And then they built bunk beds on the inside.
The,
so you
yeah,
the
but-
Connexes themselves were a funny story.
Well, they didn't want you to be spoiled.
Well, no, our battalion commander demanded that we, fortify them. And we needed to sandbag them, right?
Yeah.
And he's a full bird colonel, and so us being from Southwest Virginia, if you've never been in a Connex, there's no support across the top of those things. You put any weight on the top, and it's going to crumble like a beer can.
Yeah,
So what did we do? Being the industrious,
hillbillies that we were.
hillbillies that we were, and using our ingenuity, we put a layer of 3 sandbags all the way around the edge so that it looked like there were 3 layers of sandbags on the thing. And the colonel was happier than hell.
Yeah, he ain't never climbing his sorry hind end up there and looking.
No, he wasn't going to look.
No.
He wanted them all the way on the top, all the way
yeah.
across.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. But it would have collapsed them all like beer cans. I mean, they couldn't have withstood the weight. He was the one, he had the battalion, he had his people at battalion, fortifying battalion with sandbags, and they were up there for 2 weeks with shovels and sandbags, filling sandbags, one at a time, just killing themselves. And, we built 3 inclined planes, and we did the entire company area in 2 days.
Yeah,
And he came down and saw those, and he thought we were just like friggin' mechanical engineers.
no, we're just lazy and trying to find the
I
easy
know.
way out of it.
He's like, "Can we take one of these up there?" Yeah, we're done. Have at it.
So the chemical alarm.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we're sleeping in his tent, and Billy's like 2-3 cots down from me. And we're just middle of the night, probably midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
somewhere
so
around
yeah, like 1 o'clock or so.
Yeah, so we're sitting there and we hear this just buzzing going off, and we're like, what the hell is that? And we just lay there for 5-10 minutes, and I'm like, Billy, is that the chemical alarm? He's like, yeah. So we lay there for another 10 minutes. Should we get up and tell somebody? I reckon, yeah.
No. We didn't. It kept on ringing. It kept on ringing, and you were like, you said, should we go tell somebody? And I said, well, we ain't dead yet, so I'm going to go ahead and say we'll just keep sticking around here in the tent, and somebody else will come fix it. I guess the battery went dead or anything, but...
No, that's because they were burning diesel.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
I thought it was because the batteries were going dead or something. They were just trying to get. But I mean, who knows? That was all a dog and pony show anyway. I mean, what? By the time that detector was to pick up chemicals anyway, we're done. So it doesn't really matter. And also sleeping in those tents for mortar reasons was kind of unsafe because, at least the Connex boxes had it was a little bit thicker than a tent.
It didn't stop.
But it didn't
around.
stop anything, because that
Say
shrapnel
we
went
ain't gonna stop
straight
no
through.
more.
It was
where-
just like paper. That shrapnel didn't slow down at all going through those things.
Nope.
Even fortified, probably.
No, Siglowski.
Especially not the way y'all had them fortified.
There was one night. It was the night of the Marine Corps birthday, ironically, but Siglowski actually got hit in that attack.
We watched a movie that
Got
night.
hit right in the face with a piece of shrapnel. But had he been asleep in his cot, he would have died because the shrapnel, about 3 pieces of shrapnel, tore through that Connex right where his cot was. And I mean, it would have just torn right through his head and his neck and his upper torso.
So this is another night that he can attribute his life to me, much like Willie P can. If you haven't listened to that show yet. So we were all sitting in our third tent because we made the third tent there at the end, like our little USO area or whatever we had. At the very back of it, we kind of roped it off and put dividers up or something to have a little,
Sandbags.
entertainment. Yeah, an entertainment section back there where you could fit 5 or 6 chairs and a TV, and that's where we would play video games or watch DVDs or something.
We made a sandbag wall around it so we didn't have to move when the mortars came.
Yeah. And so we had a meeting, a platoon meeting that evening. I'll never forget it. And our platoon sergeant, I think it was Sergeant Smallcock at the time, or Smallwood, I'm sorry. They came to us and he said, all right, look. He said, I need to tell y'all from now on, when y'all start hearing them mortars drop, y'all need to run underneath the trailers and you need to go get in your positions. I mean, goddamn, there's mortars dropping and y'all are just lollygagging and hanging around like ain't nothing going on, And true, I mean, whatever, we done been mortared so many times, it was, you
were numb to it.
We
Yeah,
were jaded. I mean, we really were.
yeah, like
You
whatever.
were complacent in that, and you're like, the bastards can't shoot, can't aim.
Well, the one
so
thing is, but they would walk them. That's one good thing they could do. They could walk their mortars, so you could hear them if they started getting closer. Then maybe get in a little bit of a hurry. So anyway, so later on this night, after this little safety briefing about us getting motivated,
safety briefing.
we're back there in our little movie theater area, and I'll never forget. We were watching Any Given Sunday, and it was me, you, Bateman, that
Siggy.
fucking pussy, Siggy, and who else? Maybe Purdue or Lynch. I think it was Purdue.
One of the two.
And so we're sitting there watching the movie, and way off in the distance, maybe a click or two away, we all just kind of look at each other. And we stop. We're like, okay, that was kind of far enough away. We can pretend like we didn't hear it. So we're not going to go anywhere. We're going to keep watching our movie. And then about 10 seconds later,
That one hit
like,
the CP
all right,
tent.
that one is getting a little bit closer. Maybe we should go. And so we start exiting the tent. And as we're, so if we're at this end of the tent, that end of the tent, north of us we're going to, we start heading out. And before, I think when the first person got to the edge of the tent to start going out, you just heard, right on top of us, this bastard landed. And everybody hits the ground. And Siggy's in front of me. And a piece of shrapnel, I'm telling you, this thing is, no more the size. I mean, it's smaller than this pop tap right here on this Budweiser. It's probably a quarter of its size, just twisted up and strapped a little bit. I didn't know Siggy had gotten hit, but when we both hit the ground, he was in front of me running. We all go down, and when I look back up, he's facing me, and he's bleeding out of the mouth. I'm like, what the hell? Come to find out, that little teeny tiny piece of shrapnel hit him right here in the mouth, and it felt like a Louisville Slugger getting hit as hard. He said that's what it felt like, and
Damn.
just spun him completely around where he was facing me. And I think Casey screamed, Siggy, are you okay? Yeah. And Bateman's dumb ass screams, no, he's hit, he's down. And he just takes off running out the door for cover. And
how close is it did the mortar drop? probably.
Oh, it was 15
from
feet.
within the
Yeah.
base of this room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how close you were.
Shit.
Yeah.
But so what had happened is, fortunately for us, I told everybody. Actually, earlier I had told Siglowski, he was trying to leave and go back and take a nap or go to sleep, and I was like, "Oh, come and stay to watch a movie, you wuss. Just hang out." And good thing he listened to me.
Had he gone to his rack,
He'd have been
killed him.
dead. Yeah.
That
And
mortar would have done him in.
so we were all still in the tent, and we started running out. He still got hit, unlucky bastard. I mean, he was going to get hit either way.
He had a Siglowski face block going the whole war. Stop shrapnel fist.
Yeah.
Very, very multi-use.
But I'm trying to put in perspective this mortar round dropping 15 feet and the massive fireball explosion right there.
Well, the massive fireball explosion
they're not
was Hollywood.
I know. Well, I mean,
It's a lot of dirt.
Yeah.
yeah, That's what
there's a flash.
but an explosion is an explosion is what I mean. Like, I mean, it's still percussion and with,
it'll rock your world.
Yeah.
It'll ring your ears.
Now, fortunately for us, and this is just, and look, this is why I believe in God and I know good well, because this is, you just can't, you can't be this lucky as we all were. So essentially, we're all running out, and we, and Siggy, he's hit and he's bleeding out of the mouth. He's in shock. So I pick him back up and just take him out, and we're just running. I'm trying to get him to the bunker or something underneath there.
No,
I'm
I mean, you
thinking,
took him to the medic.
yeah, that's right.
Everybody
We were-
else went to the
bunker. Me and you took him to the medic, and then we went back out front just in case they were jumping the fence. And I also remember as me and you were running him to the medic, somebody let off a flare on our side of gas, and it went straight in the air and made a whoosh sound. And
Yeah, that was one of those towers in front of our position.
and Dick Purdue sits there and screams, RPG! And everybody hits the ground again except for me and Casey. And I'm like, it's a flare, you dumb ass. And so everybody's hitting the ground instead of getting to their bunkers because of him. And anyway, and Siggy gets hit, and the mortar where it hit at, like here's our tent, and directly behind it is a Connex box, and kind of behind the Connex box and to the right are these makeshift showers. So the momentum from the wind that night carried the mortar just a little bit past our tent. If it hadn't have been windy, it would have landed right on top of our movie theater.
Yeah.
Instead, the wind carried it just enough, and it landed right in between the tent, the Connex box, and the people taking showers at the time. Now, you want to talk about being buck naked and having your, butthole
funny.
tightened up.
So,
yeah.
so you're saying they were walking them around like they were aiming them, so they could shoot it and say, "Oh, that landed kind of close. Let's move over."
I don't think they were. That's the
General idea.
general idea. I don't think they had any kind of. They were just doom, and just pointing in different directions.
Essentially,
hoping.
mortar rounds fire off like bottle rockets. Don't think? I mean, obviously much bigger, but I mean the way you shoot them is just a metal tube, and you.
Yeah, you drop them
much,
down
yeah.
the end.
Yeah. And they're shooting them off as fast as they could.
And from what during that time of the war, it's my understanding what they were doing. They were literally putting the mortar tubes were buried in the ground, right? And they were putting
Ice.
the mortar rounds in ice and setting the mortar round at the top of the tube and leaving, so that they were nowhere near the tube when the ice melted enough for the round to slide down in the tube and go off.
Well, it makes
Essentially, like,
sense.
it's-
I mean, no, I'm following you. I was just wondering, were
It's
they
kinda-
that chicken shit or what?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, well, I mean, they were against Apache helicopters and Black Hawks and night vision goggles. I mean,
Okay, so really, it's more of
kudos
it's
to
really
them.
a strategic thing. Just like,
yeah,
well, I
kudos
can.
to them for figuring that out. I mean, that's genius, honestly. But it's just like you were talking about in Modified, how you used to put that wax ring down in there,
Yeah.
and the wax ring would burn up and give them more horsepower. Same concept.
Yeah, it would do it.
They would
the
freeze
ice
the rounds
would-
in ice, put it down in the tube, and then when the ice melted, boom, there it goes, and you're nowhere to be found. So they can't come. I mean, if you've ever seen any of these videos on
And
the
it
internet,
makes sense. I was thinking they were just chicken shit, but they're not. That was just strategic.
No,
because
that's-
because the helicopters would be once they fire off one round, they're
Well-
like, "Oh, there he is."
Well, not exactly, because at that point in the war, the base commander wasn't bright enough to have any of the 40 Apache helicopters that were on the airfield behind us
Oh yeah,
flying at night. It's an all-weather attack aircraft.
Yeah.
That's what it's designed for. But no, we can't fly them at night. Shortly thereafter, he went home and we got somebody with common sense that took command of the base, and we had combat air patrols all night, and they brought in artillery batteries, and
So you
they
do your
started
outgoing
shooting
fire.
back
Yeah.
at the people that were shooting at us, and it's amazing when you kill them.
They don't shoot back. Yeah,
shoot
it's
at you
crazy.
anymore.
Crazy.
It was a funny concept how that worked.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think we were at a war or something like
know,
that.
right?
So,
Getting back to the beginning of that story, though, when he was talking about our platoon sergeant and yelling about getting to the bunkers when we're being shelled, he is correct to an extent. You run to the bunker after the shelling is over. When you're getting shelled, you get down and you stay down till the shelling stops and you can get to cover. Because if you don't, you running through the friggin' tent and you get whacked in the face with shrapnel.
yeah, because essentially the idea is if somebody's going to start, and we're talking about more sophisticated warfare here, but say in Vietnam or even World War II, when they're dropping artillery on you, after they do that, that's to cripple you, and then they move in and attack. Well, they weren't going to be attacking us. They just didn't have the
They were
ability.
they were just there just
They
to
were just
irritate
taking
you.
pop shots and dropping mortars and trying to just,
Weren't they trying to hit the Apaches, but they just kept hitting us?
yeah.
I don't know if it was the Apaches or we weren't very far from that fuel farm either. I think they were trying to get those fuel bladders.
Well, yeah, and how would they know those fuel bladders were on there if,
Except
we
that-
didn't let every single Iraqi and their cousin on base
There you
every
go.
single day? That was a common thing. Because, see, we were truck drivers over there. That was our original job. Like, when we signed up, truck driver. And not even fifth wheel, just those World War II troop
Yeah,
carriers.
we were
Like,
light infantry carriers. That's
we
what our MO
we
was.
were a formality, as all we were. We weren't even an existent, necessary, But when we go over there, they throw us in these fifth wheel FMTVs, and they're like, well, we'll just pay contracted civilians 3 times what we're paying y'all, and you just go out there and take the bullets for them. And being truck drivers, the days we didn't have things to do that involved escorting people, they would throw us out there on the tower. They would have us going out there and searching people. I went out there one day to work the gate, and he was like, hey, go out there and, search these people for bombs. I said, fuck, what? I was searching for what? He said, bombs. I said, brother, that ain't my gig, man. I drive trucks for a living. I said, I ain't going outside this gate. And then, of course, I was in the Army, and they were on our control. And, what I ended up doing is going out there and searching these bastards. But, things like that, all of them were coming on base at all points in times. And a couple of them made some attacks. If I'm not mistaken, there was somebody from Franklin County that received a Bronze Star on one of the attacks where an Iraqi civilian got on post. He wasn't in our unit or anything like that, but...
Do you remember? Now the base we're talking about was LSA Anaconda. It was at the time it was the largest American base in Iraq. Somewhere around 25,000 soldiers and airmen of all the different branches and American contractors were stationed there at any given time. The Iraqis planted an IED in a traffic circle on the post. On the post, surrounded by 25,000 American servicemen. That's how good our security was.
Well, if those prick MPs weren't driving around all day giving people tickets for not wearing their seatbelts in their Humvees and making them stand on the side of the road and knock out other people, then maybe they could have stopped that IED from happening. But
Didn't you have to do that?
no, that was Quisenberry that did, I think. I never had to.
Did you ever? Yeah, you know what he did, right?
He wasn't wearing his Kevlar, right?
Yeah, him and Crabtree got that.
Yeah.
Well, they got their punishment was to stand at that traffic circle all day and hand out traffic tickets.
Yeah,
So they did.
In the middle of a war zone.
to officers, didn't they?
All they wrote tickets to was officers.
That's how I wrote them, dude. Yeah.
The only people that got tickets were officers.
God bless you, Quisenberry. And rest in peace, too. We lost him, a couple years ago?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's one of the best people I've ever known.
These pricks, Bodine, to put it into perspective, would sit outside of the gate, maybe 2 miles away from the entrance of the gate, because it was still pretty secure that far out. And like these battalion commanders or whatever, post generals or whoever their little suck asses were, would sit out there. They would leave their air conditioned offices for a couple hours and go sit in a Hummer on the side of the road and think they were doing something. And we would be coming in off a 300-mile mission of getting IED'd and shot at all day long in 150-degree weather. They would start griping at us and going back to our company commander and saying, your soldiers aren't wearing their BDUs properly. They need to have all their shirts on. They need to have all their gear. Because we would be coming in backwards hats and, just T-shirts and stuff. And we actually, this is the pettiness in a war zone. But Lieutenant Bernard stood up to him, and he told him, if you're going to keep doing this to my soldiers,
That's incredible. That's a priority, though.
Well, that's how stupid they were. Because they never went outside the gate.
Yeah.
Never.
They were fobbits. And, Staff Sergeant Johnson did that to him, too. He got in trouble. Our platoon got in trouble, and he was the acting platoon sergeant at the time because Kemp had gone home. And he had to go see the battalion commander, and he said, I've got pictures of your platoon coming in, and they're not wearing their uniform properly. One of these other companies took pictures of you on the road, and you're not wearing your uniform. And he goes, well, I got pictures of that company not wearing their uniforms properly either, sir. What are you going to do about that? He was the one that charged me with drinking. And there was me and 3 other guys, and JAG wouldn't prosecute us because they couldn't find anybody that would testify that they saw us drinking. And you should have heard our excuses. We were paragons of virtue, police calling the Iraqi desert.
I was curious, how did y'all, at this point in time, wash your clothes and stuff? He was talking about BDUs.
Buckets of water.
Yeah.
Just old-fashioned buckets of water.
Yeah.
And
Buckets of water, wring them out, and hang them up.
I think that's where my second nickname came in.
Yep.
I stumbled across one, didn't I?
They named me Mildew because I went out and did my laundry
and left it.
and went on a mission and left it in a
didn't hang it
bucket
up.
for what, a couple days,
Yeah.
3-4
A
days.
couple days, couple weeks.
So
And let me guess, they didn't give you a new one to wear, so you had to deal
No,
with
they
it.
didn't give us new uniforms because our supply sergeant was taking all of our equipment and gear and sending it back to Army surplus stores in the States and making money off of it. So we were having to
Did they court-martial
we were
his
having
ass?
to beg the Pennsylvania
Not beg,
Reserve
barter.
unit. Yeah, what's her
No.
name?
Robertson was our sergeant. I don't know what the...
No, her name was the chick.
Pitts.
Pitts, yes.
Sergeant Pitts.
Sergeant Pitts. She
you all love Sergeant Pitts.
Oh,
You all love
well-
yourselves some Sergeant Pitts.
well, that was a Siggy, I think.
That
Siggy. She actually came up and hung out with us at Radford one weekend after we got home. That's the only time I've seen her, but
was that before or after the boob job?
after the boob job.
I like to call them surgically enhanced flotation devices.
Yeah, so she was a supply sergeant for the Pennsylvania Reserve Unit, and they were the people stationed in Kuwait. So they would come up to Nasiriyah and bring supplies, and we would come down from Balad and meet them in Nasiriyah. Then we go back through Baghdad, and they go take their sweet little ride back through Kuwait and beautiful, not getting shot at. But when we meet them up in Talil, every now and then she would be up there, and they would have a surplus and stuff. So we would go to her to get boots and uniforms and things because we couldn't even go to our own supply sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
And
We couldn't
And yeah-
get machine gun mounts from him.
So would y'all just barter with her?
no, she would just give it to us. We didn't have to borrow. I mean, we would hook her up with
no.
other stuff. We would give them beer and
She
stuff.
would want alcohol.
Yeah,
and
we'd give them
get
beer.
supplies.
And
Well, I mean, that's bar. I mean,
And one
or
thing
trade,
that burnt
horse
me up
trading.
too was at the very end of the war, like the last week, we were packing up all of our stuff. We were out there in the motor pool. I saw them emptying Connex boxes full of stuff and giving them to Iraqis, which, fine if you got the extra and they need a pair of boots. I'm not against giving them one, whatever. But when our guys needed them the entire time and you said we ain't got them, and there
Uniforms
you are
falling
giving them
apart.
away at the end, it's like...
Wearing pants with holes
The
in it.
uniforms didn't bother me at all. The things that bothered me was when he came across the boxes of the machine gun mounts
Yeah.
that we didn't have, right? He swore up and down we didn't have any.
Yeah, so to put this in perspective for anybody, so if you're out of the turret, any crew served weapon you have up there, whether it be a saw or a Mark 19 grenade launcher, 50 cal, you can mount it and then the turret swings around. And even down to the saw, it makes it a little bit easier. But for the first 5 or 6 months we were there, if you had a saw and you were out of the top, you had to take the bipod and just sit it and just hold it the entire time you were up there. So it made it quite a pain in the ass.
Y'all would hate to hear what I had for my 4th deployment, the one to Afghanistan.
You had the cruise.
I had
didn't you?
the crow system.
That's what it's called,
Oh
yeah.
man, that thing was beautiful.
It's a joystick.
It's
remote control.
It's like all automated up top. All you do is go up and you bore sight your weapon, put it mounted up there, bore sight it. You go down and sit behind the driver, and you've got a screen with the joystick. And all you do is laze the target, pull the trigger.
We were, the 1032nd, we were literally the last cowboys of war.
We were.
I really think we really were. We were the last cowboys of war. We were the last guys who went out there like every single day behind the wire with nothing but what we had on our backs. No kind of help from no armor on our vehicles, no kind of protection, no kind of protection plates. Radios didn't work. It was really 14 to 17, Southwest Virginia boys each and every day against all of Iraq. Every day. Against the elements.
We had us.
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories is when y'all were talking about y'all had the radar jam. It was a radar jammer, wasn't it?
That was my worst day of the war. Yeah, it's called a warlock.
Yeah, the warlock.
Shit.
You had the warlock running, and they told you to run it, but then the radios wouldn't work, and you didn't know that, and somebody got killed because of it.
3 people died that day.
Yeah.
And Willie P got shot. And another Canadian got shot. And I almost got shot, and saving Willie P, diving in front of him. And
you don't understand the absolute stupidity of us taking that piece of equipment on that mission. There is no way in hell they could have. If the thing had worked perfectly, there's no way they could tell if it worked or not. Because that thing only protected a bubble of like at most 300 meters, which means the truck in front of me was protected.
Which was a civilian.
And the truck behind me was protected. And the rest of the convoy's ass was hanging out in the wind.
Yeah.
So
that would be us.
Yeah, they could have hit an IED at any time, front or back.
Did the radios work on repeaters, or were they?
No, we had amplifiers.
Okay.
I did the commo every day. Before we left, I loaded the frequencies in the night before. We all met up with the civilians. We did a briefing with them. While they were briefing the civilians, I did a commo check with all the trucks before we pulled. Everything friggin' worked. All the comms worked.
But you didn't have the warlock on.
I didn't have it on. Couldn't turn it on the base because it messed with the aircraft. So
I'm like you. I've worked with radios quite a bit.
My instructions were I was to turn it on when we got outside the gates and we were on the road.
In hindsight, you would have probably just said, "Damn thing won't cut on."
If I'd have known now what I knew, if I'd have known then what I know now, I never would have turned it on.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, there was no way they could have told if that equipment worked. If the front of the convoy got hit with an IED, how would they know if the warlock worked?
You almost needed one on there.
Because it wasn't in range.
You almost needed one on every other truck.
And if it did work
exactly.
and it jammed it, you would never know that it did jam it anyway.
If it worked and nothing blew up, they wouldn't have known. It was absolutely asinine to take that thing. And then they mounted it in a Humvee, which was unarmored, piece of shit, lightweight. Had I been in a regular 1088 like I normally drove, the first thing that would have happened, I'd have run that bus off the road. And the car either would have followed the bus or he would have let me up first. And that would have started the whole shindig. And I don't know what would have happened from there. But I know I wouldn't be living with 20 years full of guilt because of that shit.
I wouldn't live with guilt, though, but I get it. I mean, they told you to do it, but I see where you're coming from. It does feel, because you did flip the switch and it did button.
Well, the worst part for me was we came back and we had an AAR. It was 3 days after the ambush.
Which is an after-action review for anybody, just a briefing, essentially.
Where we all got in a room and we all got to tell our stories and we had whiteboards. We all got to draw. And then we all understood what happened. Because up till that point, we all knew our pieces of the puzzle, but we didn't have the puzzle put together.
So you put it all together as the everything when you put everything.
We could see the whole timeline of how things happened. And, the officer swore up and down in that AAR, oh no, this thing cannot jam these radios. Swore up and down. Damn near called me a liar. That these things can't jam the radios. Fast forward to 2009, we're getting ready to go to Afghanistan. We got to take a warlock class. One of the first things out of the instructor's mouth is, we have an officer at every battalion whose only job it is to make sure that these things are set on frequencies that do not interfere with the frequencies you're using, because these will block your radio.
Well, I remember that. We had to do that before we went to Afghanistan.
And I lived with that guilt for all those years, thinking I'd screwed up.
I see that.
Well, I mean, a lot of people live. I mean, I still live guilt that day because I sat down and looked at those guys driving right by us in that BMW, and my thought was, well, if nobody behind me had any problems, and because normally our protocol was, hey, if somebody's coming up through, they would radio up and say, hey, we're letting a car through. They're friendly. They're coming on through. So I see them going through. I'm like, well, nobody said anything about it. Otherwise, I'd have put him out in the grass.
Well, they couldn't have said anything because of the damn warlock.
Well, exactly, exactly. And so nobody could warn us.
And that's I had the exact feelings Billy did, because I saw him coming.
And he
you
moved.
know-
He turned off onto the 4-lane in the middle of the convoy, so the rear gun truck didn't let him by.
No.
So he could never radio up to at least to relay it and say,
Nobody behind me saw him. I was the first vehicle to see him. But in my mind, not knowing that, I'm thinking the two trucks behind him let him by. We didn't hear anything on the radio saying anything different. So I was like, well, the other two trucks let him by. He's supposed to be here. And I'm in this little piece of shit car and I'm going to get run over by a bus if I go out there.
And Billy jumps out and shoots up somebody's house, don't he?
well, somebody was.
I thought it was a school.
It might have been a homeschool. Well, no, because what happened is, look, we felt the rounds coming from our right, and when I jumped out of the truck, there was another Iraqi on the side of the road, or a Pakistani, hell, I don't know. I mean, I couldn't tell the difference right then and there. It could have been one of our, the guys we were escorting. Could have been somebody on the side of the road. I don't know, but he was pointing right at that house.
So you just assumed it, and everybody would have done that exact same
Well, I mean,
thing.
and I wouldn't just like shooting to kill. I wouldn't finding like targets.
Cover fire.
Basically, what I was doing is laying down rounds. Yeah,
Suppressive fire,
laying
yeah.
down rounds through the windows to make sure nobody's popping out of them until I saw a striker unit come up. And then I guess somewhere in the midst of my losing my mind and waving at them, they thought I was just playing a game or something. So they just lollygag on up there. And I'm like, hey, all you guys in big old armor and the big weapons, we just got hit. Maybe move with a sense of urgency here. And all of a sudden they finally all roll out of the MRAP or whatever it was, and they all take, lay down and do their thing. And at that point in time, I just got up and walked away. I was like, well, I'm going to go back to my truck and smoke a cigarette. And that's when I got railed by that colonel.
Somebody was in there fixing lunch. Somebody was in there fixing lunch, had it on the stove, and all of a sudden bullets started flying through the windows.
Well,
Billy shot the hot dog out of somebody's hand.
Well, Willie P was up in the turret also firing, and fortunately for whoever was in that house, he was firing the M16 instead of just swinging that Mark 19 grenade
19
launcher
on
at that
it.
house, because that son of a gun would have barked thunder and ruined a lot of people's days. So
we would
fortunately,
have had a real mess on our
yeah,
hands,
fortunately
but
he didn't do. Fortunately, we were smart enough not to do that, and
Yeah.
which makes sense because anybody and give Willie P credit for that, because a lot of people in that stressful situation would have just turned that bad boy around and started barking. But he was smart enough to know, okay, well, I don't really know exactly what's going on here. Let's not just start blowing up anybody and everybody in sight, which what a lot of people would have done. So
with that type of pressure, that was good. Good thinking on Willie P's part for him to react that way. Good presence of mind, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
yeah. Well, all of us reacted pretty good that day. Actually, our whole last episode was all about that day. So if you
Yeah.
hadn't listened, you can go back and hear.
That's what I was going to say. I
It's
kind of
really
distracted.
good, yeah. But to kind of get to where we wanted to talk about today, this is 4th of July weekend, and to take a quick second away from the military talk, we got to celebrate this 4th of July weekend. Bird and Casey here both came up to Callaway last night, up to the mountain, and might I add that once again Simon and Heather Winch put on one hell of a shindig, and Billy Hurt and the 5 Mile Mountain Road Band, Ella's Eats come up there. Everybody had food, alcohol. I mean, so many of our previous guests were up there. If you remember back for our State of Appalachia episode, the Deckers, they were up there. The legend Ryan Woods, of course, Amos and Simon have been on a bunch of episodes. Joe Long has been on. Emmett, Casey, you both have been on the show. Andrew Kimball. We had a ton of former guests A lot of really cool people from Franklin County and an amazing fireworks show.
Yeah, it was definitely a good
Oh,
time.
it was
I
a lot of
enjoyed it.
fun.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun last night.
You don't
Music
realize
was great. Food was good.
you don't realize you can just randomly find yourself on the side of a mountain in Callaway and it just be the party of the year. I mean, every single time.
It was great. It was like 5 miles down the road from my house.
So
It was
did
awesome.
Ella did all the food, or
Yes.
did he have other things going?
No, she did all of it this time.
Oh, I want to give a shout out to her because God, that was the best burger I've ever had.
Oh yeah, she makes some fire food.
Oh yeah.
Y'all missed out. She didn't have the baked potatoes last night. They're the
she
best. If you can find it up at Chaos when she's doing that, like I said, she takes this baked potato
And
she,
deconstructs it.
Yeah,
and then puts that shit back
basically, like,
together.
takes out all the guts or whatever, and then mixes it back in with sour cream and cheese, I guess, butter, salt, pepper, and then barbecue is my favorite. She takes the barbecue sauce, puts it back in there, mix it. Oh,
I think barbecue's my favorite too, but she said she does Philly cheesesteak, and I heard that was good.
they had that
does
last
sound
night
good.
up there.
and then the
They-
Philly cheesesteak in there, and I've also had her do shrimp in there. Oh, and I've had chicken. She's done chicken too with some sort of Ella sauce. It's like a sweet sauce, and it's just like chicken rolling out of potatoes.
I'm gaining weight just listening to you all
Now,
talk
Oh,
about
it's
this.
hard to
does
beat
she
a
just
potato.
do the food truck, or does she have like a restaurant?
No, just
somewhere?
food
No,
truck.
just a food truck. That's her gig.
And when she rolls around, it's a line. You usually gotta.
And she's set up permanently right now at Chaos Mountain Brewery. So if you're
Okay.
ever up there for their nights, they got food truck. They might bring in extra ones from here and there, but she's up there for the most part, every.
If she's set up in town during the week doing the potatoes, you got to call at like 8 a.m. to book them. I mean, or else you won't get one.
We're trying to get her. I mean, I talked to her up at Chaos a couple weeks ago about coming on the show. I want to get her on here and talk to her because, Cheryl goes way back, and well, maybe we can talk about last night with her and if she had a good time up there. No, I know she did there for a minute, and I like Cheryl a lot. But it was a blast, and actually yesterday morning, Isaiah Rickman, he hit me up on Saturday night and said, "Hey man, I got to do some testing down here at the airport this morning at 7:30. He said, after that, I'm going to go flying a little bit. He said, you want to go? And I, of course, texted my wife, who, God bless her, I love you so much. She's having a rough time right now with the little one. And I was like, well, mother-in-law's here. I said, Isaiah wants me to go flying. I said, she said, all right, go ahead and go. And so we went down there and jumped in the plane and got to fly over Rocky Mountain. And we flew over the party ground for last night. Got some photos of that, and then flew down to Martinsville, and he refueled down there and came back, and it was a good time. So appreciate Isaiah, and for him, if you need any kind of plumbing services or a lot of different things, give him a call for Rickman Inc. I mean, he can handle a lot of your stuff, and it's
Where's he
top
fly
the
out
line.
of?
Smith Mountain Lake Airport.
Oh, okay.
So, and he really got me interested in maybe flying. I'd like to maybe get together, and since you fly. Maybe me, you, and John at some point in time down the road can chip in on thirds and get a plane or something like that. Because
I mean, down at Danville, there's a guy down there. He rents his plane $125 an hour.
yeah, I mean, I would just
We all three go in on it.
That's cheap.
Rent it for a couple hours. Yeah, that's wet weight too with fuel. So
Well,
With fuel?
With
Yeah.
fuel. Okay, well,
Dang.
It's probably a little more than that now.
Probably a
Oh,
second.
yeah.
Gone up.
I'd eventually like to just buy one. We could go in 3 zone or whatever,
Oh,
and leave
that'd
it
be awesome.
somewhere.
You can. I've seen ultralights for sale on the Facebook. What is it? Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah.
They pop up on there every now and then.
Well, I'd like to get one that's heavy enough to be able to fly, maybe 4 people in and a little bit of luggage or something. Because with a podcast, it'd be really cool. Because this is what I was telling Isaiah. I said, man, for this show, for the Appalachian podcast, I said the majority of anybody we're going to have in their guests are going to be coming from, if not in this area, Charlotte, Nashville, maybe Georgia at the furthest. Think about it. You get somebody kind of big and say, hey, man, we'll just fly down there, pick you up, bring you back up here, give you some lunch, do the show. We'll fly you back down and come home. Or, bring you and your family up for a day. I mean, something just a little bit extra like that. I mean, it's good optics for a show too, and it'd be difficult for me to tell somebody, hey, I'm going to send my buddy Special Ed down there to pick you up on our private plane. But ultimately, they're pretty safe. They really are.
So you're a pilot yourself. I didn't know that.
I actually went to Avery University. My major was aviation for
I didn't know they had an aviation out there.
aerospace management. Flight operations is the major.
So do you become? Are you like IFR or VFR?
I've got my pilot's license IFR. Well, I need to get my IFR current, but pilot's license. As soon as I get my IFR current, I can do IFR, and I've also got my commercial and working on my multi. As soon as I can get into a slot to do that.
That's cool. Because really, I mean, by basic understanding, it really is good to have the IFR clearance to be able to. Yeah. I mean, as a safety, if you were to get in a storm or knowing how to do that and making sure you're right on top of it. I don't know what Isaiah is. I don't know if he's VFR or IFR.
I don't know what he is, but he's very meticulous and very safe.
Well, that's pilot in general.
I can't wait to, I really want to take my wife and daughter up with him at some point. And of course, we'll do that in the future. But, with something like that, with a plane like that, really, we were talking about it, and 8 or 9 out of 10 times that you do have a crash and something like that, it's typically pilot error. Yeah. Because those planes are so light, if you know what you're doing, you can pretty much land them down and be okay. So if a lot of times it's probably somebody not checking their stuff, doing the proper inspection or something on it. So, I mean, his plane we flew in yesterday was 1967.
Well, it's if
you had, how many 1967 cars are on the road right now? Yeah. Not very many. If they are, they're antiques and they're in road shows.
Yeah, and airplanes have a longevity because of the annual inspections and stuff.
They don't depreciate either. I mean, they get more expensive. Even his, I was asking him about it. A 1967, I think he said upwards of like $100 and some $1,000, which, I mean, it kind of sounds like a lot, but when people are spending that much on a Denali, I mean, I would rather have a plane. Where
that is a lot, though, for that age of plane, though. Basically when you just take it in. But, yeah, I guess perspective, maybe not. But.
And if the plane's for hire, too, you got to get an inspection every 100 hours.
Yeah, however many hours it is, I can't remember, you have to actually rebuild your entire engine, which is like a $30,000 process. I think it's maybe every 1,500 hours or something like that. You have to rebuild your engine. That's what Isaiah was telling me.
I'd have to check the FARs, but
as much as I love flying, I don't know.
No,
I just think about us in the podcast. All of us as bad a shape we've been in. It's like, man, every airplane might not be a good idea.
Well, it's great because I've flown commercial. I've actually took a couple of pilot lessons because my stepdad has a plane, and back in the day I took a few, and that's long before the whole GPS thing on these planes and the technology that even his has. In 1967, he had GPS mounted in there.
Yeah.
Flying commercially, even out of Roanoke, it's okay. Looking at things from the sky, no matter where you're going from. But if you actually get in a private plane and get to go over your hometown and see things and, be able to say, well, that's where I'm at. That's where my house is. That's where my farm is. Hey, that's where Bodine lives. Next time I come up, we're going to get bags of shit to drop on his house. Things like that you have the ability to do with a private plane locally. So it was a blast, and a huge thanks to Isaiah, for making that happen. And
I like flying commercially because I like the acceleration, like the takeoff and landing. I'm the weirdo. It's like, all right, it's time to take off and land. That's my favorite part of the flight. I just like the acceleration and the little G-force that you actually get to pull.
Yeah, because you don't really feel it when you're up in the air. Everything's pressurized. You're just,
Bungee's just kind of sitting there.
Kind of floating along. So, but this week it was a blast. If you didn't make it up and we invited you, shame on you. If you didn't make it up and you want to go, maybe butter up and kiss our asses a little bit better, and you'll get an invite next time. Because
you should have parachuted out down into it. That would have been epic.
I am of the mindset that it makes no sense whatsoever to jump out of a perfectly good aircraft. So you won't see me doing that. But maybe somebody could have did it. Maybe next year we can have somebody do that. They can jump out with an American flag, hanging behind them in a bodysuit on fire.
So when we went to Bowman Gray Stadium a couple of weeks ago, they had the paratroopers come in, and one guy had an American flag, but it was sparks. But he also had the thing making sparks behind it. I don't understand how he did not set that flag on fire at about 200-300 feet up. It was right on top of it. I'm like, dear God, I know for sure that I would be done set that thing on fire. Could you imagine, though, you're coming in and you done set the flag on fire behind you, and it's like, uh-oh, we got a problem here.
Yep, I just landed in the middle of the South with an American flag on fire. Somebody's about to get
it. Somebody's about to get it.
Kick my ass. Hold on, is that Burt Myers running at me with a tire iron?
Yeah. They would have stormed him down there, but after they extinguished him. So he would have went down with him on fire, too.
So yeah, once again, thanks again to Simon and everybody that was a part of that, and try and get in touch with us and come up again next year. Like I said, good music, good food, and everybody loves everybody. And I was actually talking to all my really close friends up there, Simon and Amos and the guys, that I'm really close to. And I said the reason I'll enjoy coming up here to this party every year is because I know all my friends are here and I go up there and hang out with them. But we never actually get to hang out because so many other people come up there that we're trying to talk to and see that you don't have, guys from the show and everything, you end up, and even people that I don't know very well would, hey, Billy, come over here. I want to ask you about this. I got to talk to Greg Maxwell last night. I've been back and forth with him for the longest time about coming on the show and talking about things like, hey, Billy, come let me ask you a question, so it was a good time. But, for that, it is Independence Day weekend, and it's a special weekend to a lot of people. And for us, we'll get back to going overseas. Do y'all?
It beat the heck out of my July 4th weekend in
What's that?
2003.
Oh, yeah. So, spending 4th of July in Iraq, we want to paint this picture for you. This is what we're going to get up to right now. And I guess we still have some time in between from our last show, stories about crossing the border and finally making it there. I guess we'd been to Anaconda about 2 months at this point in time, maybe. And for anybody that doesn't really know, it was kind of a lull. I mean, for the invasion and maybe for a month after, it was pretty dangerous. For us going on our missions, the 3rd ID going to Baghdad, us and the 82nd and the 101st going into Fallujah. First couple months, but I guess we were at Dogwood when it kind of started easing up a little bit.
And we had I'd say probably a 4 to 6 week window where it was pretty peaceful, actually. And at the beginning of July of 2003, theater-wide, they changed our rules of engagement. And prior to that, our rules of engagement pretty much said if we felt threatened, we were authorized to use deadly force. Consequently, the Iraqis were afraid to mess with us. After that, they weren't afraid to mess with us, and things went to hell in a handbasket really quick.
Yeah, I remember in mid to late June doing missions down to Talil and riding through Baghdad out of the top of my turret with nothing but a Virginia Tech hat on backwards and a brown BDU top, no Kevlar vest, no nothing. And, a couple people, not most because most understood, but they were like, what the hell are you doing? I was like, man, I'm so bored. I just wish somebody would do something. I'm like, here I am. Just, because it got so monotonous. It was like that. Well, I mean.
Well, they shot mortars at you. What else you want?
No. We're getting up to this. They hadn't shot mortars to that point in time. It really was. From about May to July 4th weekend, there was a lull. And it was like the eye of the hurricane, essentially.
And there's different, when we talk about being shot at over there, there's two different kinds of being shot at. There's being shot at when we're on our post. And when we talk about being shot at on post, that's artillery rounds, mortars, rockets.
Or random rounds that are coming over the fence and hitting $10,000 radios.
Yeah, that happened on occasion. It happened.
I mean, you can't do nothing about it.
But those were big rounds that could, if they landed in the wrong area, they'd kill a lot of people quick. Mm-hmm. And that happened a lot. When they started coming in, I'd say we probably got hit 20 to 25 times in a 30-day time frame for probably, July to early
October.
December.
Yeah, till we left.
I mean, it was until we changed the commands, we got a new commander in there, we got hit all the damn time.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the getting shot at when you're on the road. And that could entail somebody actually shooting at you with small arms. It could be an RPG that happened every now and then. Or it could be the damn road exploding on you.
IED, yeah.
And typically what happens when you're on the road, you're driving along, you're hot, you're bored, you're miserable.
Half asleep,
trying to stay conscious and aware of what's going on around you. bored out of your mind, and then the road explodes. And it's confusing, and you're scared. And, when that happens, if the truck can roll, you're hammering down. And you're looking to the truck in front of you to see if it's hurt. You're looking behind you to see if they're hurt. And, if nobody's hurt, you're just getting out of the AO. And fortunately for us, that happened very, very, very rarely. In our platoon, I don't think we ever had any trucks that got hit that we had to stop for.
No.
Some of the other platoons that did. But when we talk about getting shot at, there's all sorts of different kinds of getting shot at.
Have y'all talked about Helia yet?
Who?
Helia?
When we
part?
drove through town.
When we drove and Lieutenant started crying over the radio.
No, somebody remind me about this. Which lieutenant was it and
It's
what
when
happened?
we moved from, Dogwood to Anaconda?
Yeah, that's when the green and red tracers were coming through the convoy from the left and the right.
Yes,
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Because it was nighttime, right?
And
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was riding with McDavid that night, and I saw.
Chemical Hottie started screaming, gas, gas, gas. And what she was smelling was gunpowder.
Who said that?
Chemical Hottie. Remember her?
Yeah, once again, going back to
Claire has entered the building.
again.
The boss is here.
Well, hello, baby. How are you doing? Can you say hi to Casey
Hi.
and Emmett?
Hello.
I seen you and you was asleep earlier. You was snoozing.
Yeah, I was going to sleep today because I didn't have to sleep with Daddy. Bird.
Where is your Gigi and Mommy?
Go downstairs.
Oh, okay. Well,
Is your little brother crying?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to get him to sleep, but we couldn't.
oh, you couldn't get him to sleep, huh? Well,
That doesn't sound like a shocker, though. Poor little fella.
We could. We didn't try. I didn't try because then he was still quiet and I was sleeping. So if I could,
you are silly.
Hi.
Okay. Do you mind if we finish our show?
Sure.
Okay. Can you go on back downstairs and see Gigi?
No.
Well, we need you to, baby, so we can finish the show. Can you say bye to everybody?
Bye.
Bye,
Say
sweetheart.
Say bye. To the podcast world.
Bye.
Well, say we love you, okay? Get in there and help your baby brother, okay?
I love you.
I love you too.
Billy, you're going to need a big bat, buddy.
What do you mean?
Chase the boys off when she gets up.
Bat my ass. I got an
Either that or you're gonna have to have
AR-15 down there with multiple 40-round magazines.
You're just going to have us all out there on the porch when her date shows up.
Well, thankfully, our buddy C.J. Arrington, his kid's the same age, so they're bound to hook up together.
This is good to see Billy go through this because he used to do this to Doug Hurd about Doug's daughters. He used to friggin' give him all
I
sorts
remember
of
that.
grief about Doug's daughters.
We gave everybody hell about their daughters. I'm pretty sure we gave you hell about your daughter, and she was like 4 at the time. So she'll be 18 soon, bird.
No, how old was she back then?
Well, how old is she now?
29?
So she was 7.
Wow, we're getting old.
Yeah. Of course, that's just how everybody was. And yes, my daughter is vicious, cute as a button, and just raw as all get out. So I'm afraid she's going to be beating people up and at the same time doing whatever else a little girl would do. I don't know. But before we were so gracefully interrupted by her, what were we were
We
talking
were talking
about?
about Hila.
Hilla, yes. I remember that night.
Yeah, she didn't know what gunpowder smelled like. Apparently, she'd never been on a rifle range before. And she
So-
was screaming over the radio, gas, gas, gas.
So once again, Bodie, we go back
But
to
that was
us.
They'd never smelled gunpowder before again?
Apparently not.
That was a chemical hottie, right?
Yeah, she's a staff sergeant in the U.S. Army and didn't know what gunpowder smelled like.
I'm talking about also the lieutenant. I'm not going to name her name.
Yeah,
Hold on.
Was that the night that she wanted to know if we should stop? and I got on the radio and said, "You can't find your way in the day. We don't need to be driving around at night."
We got in there and she started getting shot at. And like she's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know. Come over the radio crying. I don't know what to do. And
No,
then
I'll
we're
say
in the
your
back
name.
of the convoy. We
Don't
don't even
don't.
know.
I should.
Don't.
And I'm going to tell
Don't.
you why I should say your name, because I remember one day we were going on a mission to Western Iraq, and we were communicating up through the convoy, and she came over top of us on the radio and started making some kind of demands. And I was telling her to pretty much essentially, this is an officer now, to shut the F up. I said, we have a reason why we're doing this stuff. Don't come over top of us. And she marches out of her Humvee and waddles all the way down to the end of the convoy to me, trying to tell me something. And my whole point was, you don't need to be jamming our radio up while we're at the back of the convoy trying to let people know what's coming past us, because we were stopped. And then, of course, everything happened about a month later with the radios getting jammed, and I was like, yeah. And I remember her coming to the hospital where Willie P was at, and she'd come in there and, was doing the whole, empathy thing, whatever, and I was just cutting her with my eyes like a damn razor blade. Like, this is exactly why I told you to shut up on the radio, and you're up here, and you weren't even on this mission. You just drove.
Well, that night she was crying on the radio. I mean, you could hear the tears in her voice. She's like, I don't know what to do. And we're like, we ain't even in the city yet. We don't even know what's going on.
The sky was lit up like fireworks. You see green and red tracer rounds just
How long was that
outside
convoy?
the city.
Pardon?
How long was that convoy?
That was just us. That
It was
was
almost
that was
the
just
no. It
us.
was like the whole company.
That was the night we stopped at the fuel point near Dogwood.
No,
It was that real soft sand near where the Spanish were. It's near the tank place in D1.
okay.
And that's where we spent the night. Because I remember clear as a bell. I said, we can't find our way around in the daytime. We sure as hell don't need to be driving at night.
No.
I do remember. I remember the tank factory, and I remember the tracer rounds that night and us stopping. I remember
Tank
Or get
factory is
on-
where you played football, right?
no.
No,
That
that
was-
was the chemical plant.
The tank factory is the first place the first night we got into Iraq off the Crady border, we stopped at some fuel depot in the middle of the desert. Kind of, I would assume close to Nasiriyah. Probably wasn't far. It was just a random place. Second night, we stopped at the tank factory. And I remember sleeping in my truck in those hard-ass, bolted-to-the-ground seats. And having this weird dream all night long that I had a big dip in my mouth. I was like, dang, why do I keep on thinking I got a dip in my mouth in my dream? And I woke up in the morning, and I'm like, daggone, it feels like I got a dip in my mouth still. What the hell's going on? I look in the mirror, and my lip is like swelled up 4 times to its normal size.
That's when the
some damn
mosquitoes
sand
got
spider or something had bit me.
I thought it was mosquitoes.
Whatever it was, I don't know, because I only had that happen once. If it was mosquitoes or sand fleas, I'd have been like that all day. But my lip, and I was with the 82nd Airborne, those douchebags. They were the ones there at the tank factory, and I went to their medical tent, and I was like, what can I do about this? What do you mean? What can we? I was like, my lip is like 5 times its normal size. Give me something. And they just looked at me like I was losing my mind, like I was some kind of lunatic. I'm like, I don't know if this is a scorpion or poison or what. Why don't y'all figure your shit out so I don't die? And, but
they
well,
just
you had
needed
a-
to give you some cortisone.
yeah.
Well, you had a big D in your mouth.
Allergic reaction.
Anyway,
It's good to have friends.
yeah. So no, we met at the tank factory, and there at the tank factory is where we got cut up into slices, and some of us went with the 101st, some went with the 102nd, and we went to the chemical factory, and we had the big football game with the 82nd Airborne, and then some other guys went some other places, and we met back up eventually in Fallujah. That's when we pulled into Fallujah and everything.
That's
They
where we
were
watched
taking the city in
The
Fallujah.
air assault.
Yeah, we literally we're sitting here, and
They're air assault across the street.
yeah,
That's awesome.
Helicopters landing across the street attacking.
They came up and said, "Hey, y'all, watch this."
Literally, and they've got a traffic control point on MSR Tampa, which is the road. We're on this side of the road. There's a 4-lane highway. There's Fallujah. The helicopters are landing in the middle of the road, between the roads. The troops are attacking in the Fallujah. They've got traffic control points controlling the road, and there's mounds of weapons that they're collecting at the traffic control point. Later on that night, they had to go eat chow, right? Well, they needed somebody to look after the weapons.
I still didn't find my Luger. I wanted one so bad.
You guys mind looking after these for us? Sure.
Well, I know when we got to that base, we were one of the first people on that base. So we all went over. The guys that were at the 82nd went over and parked in our formation. Like, all right, we're going to sit here. And honest to goodness, we sat there for 2 or 3 days just waiting and hoping and wondering if the rest of the guys in our company were ever going to show up, if the 101st was ever going to get there, where they were they alive or not, because we had no earthly idea.
Yeah, that was the airfield at Ramadi where we actually stopped. That's where we got that orange sandstorm.
Yep, I remember going through there, and because we were the first on base, and we would go to these like bombed out air traffic control towers and stuff, and find souvenirs and photos and stuff like that. And
Had caves dug in the side of the.
yeah, we were collecting all kinds of cool stuff. I remember. Anybody remember Hughes from First Platoon? That dumbass. I hope he's listening to this. I saw Toad from Once in a Blue Moon still, but I remember we were all sitting there, not getting ready to leave out of there, and he comes walking across the parking lot, and he has got this giant atom bomb looking thing, just dragging it, boop boop, boop boop, boop boop. Over. And I mean, I guess hopefully, clearly, it was a training aid or whatever, but nobody knew that. And he's just bouncing it up and down. And Sergeant,
Get off the nuclear warhead.
what's the guy's name that Bishop, great sergeant, the Marine Corps, he got the sword and stuff.
Yeah.
He just looks across the parking lot and said, "Hughes, what the are you doing?" He said, "I'm carrying this bomb." He said, "Take that motherfucker back somewhere." You know, I mean, it's just stupid stuff like that.
I'm sure I got him on my Facebook. I'm gonna tell him to listen to this episode.
I hope so.
Oh yeah, he lives in Marion. So when
yeah.
you guys go down the Hungry Mother, give him a call.
I made a delivery a couple years ago to Saltville for my job, and he was working up there. I was like, "Damn, Hughes!" And
He worked at that mine for years. I don't know if he's still there. Or
I don't think that's where it was at that we delivered to, but anyway, so we were up in Ramadi after all this happens, you know. So we finally, all of our guys show back up, and everybody's alive, everybody's there. And like, all right, well, we're done here. We're going back south. So we go all the way back to south to Kuwait and kind of regroup and get a couple meals in that crappy tent, go to the PX. And then they're like, all righty, well, we're going back again. And so that time is when we went to Al Assad. And that was in May of 2003. And that's where I was climbing out of my truck. And I twisted my knee and tore my ACL and my meniscus, even though that dickhead at the news article misquoted me and said I tore it up doing football or something. I don't know. Yeah. And as we went back south, we left all of our stuff in Kuwait. And when we started going back south, we never went back to Kuwait again because the rest of our company had gathered up all of our gear and they came up into the middle of Iraq in Dogwood. And that's where we met them at. So I had this knee injury for about a week. You know, I tore my ACL meniscus, and I could have went home, but, you know, I love these dudes. And I was like, man, we'll just kind of work it out a little bit and see how it goes. And so we go to Dogwood, and eventually we move up to Anaconda. We'll tell Dogwood stories later, but we get up to Anaconda, and we're all the way back up to July 4th weekend. That's where this whole show comes into effect. And y'all two were on a mission for July 4th, correct?
They sent us down to Nazariah to meet the Pennsylvania unit coming up on July 4th, knowing damn full well that the Pennsylvania unit was not coming up with a convoy. So we drove all the way down there, sat there for an entire day with nothing to do, waiting for the unit that never showed up.
And you're talking about a 300-mile trip in the hot desert.
It was closer to 350, wasn't it?
I don't remember. I thought it was 300 because I always remember, like, applying it to from here to Myrtle Beach. I always remember that was...
But you might be right.
I think it was like 300 because that's what I would do. But it was like 300 at 45 miles an hour, too. So you're talking about
A long
9,
day.
10, 11 hours.
I think the best time we ever made it and nothing ever happened, I think we made it one day in about 7 hours. I think it was the best time I remember us ever making it.
We didn't know what to do with ourselves. We got so drunk that early that night that we were all done by like
Well,
9.
the joke was on them because they thought we had nothing to do.
Exactly.
How much beer can we drink in a 24-hour period? I think that's where most of those pictures came from that they charged us for.
Yeah.
Charged you for?
Yes. Me and 3 other young soldiers that were just industrious and wanted to take care of the great nation state of Iraq were picking up empty beer cans that somebody had thrown onto the desert in Iraq and just littered everywhere. And we were picking them up.
You were keeping Iraq green.
I was, and somebody took pictures of us.
Make
and
Iraq green again.
And accused us of drinking alcohol. And they brought us up on charges for that.
I mean, can you believe the nerve of somebody like that to think that our unit, as professional as we were, and as many miles as we logged with no casualties, would drink alcohol?
Especially after leaving us in the middle of the desert for 48 hours and literally the middle of the desert with nothing there, and expect us to, I mean, I don't imagine why they would think we would drink or anything.
No, I mean,
to amuse ourselves.
We were professional.
Oh yeah.
But that 4th of July, so really, that weekend in 2003 really changed everything for the entire war. You all went down on that mission, and I didn't make that mission. It was one of the first ones I had a break from, and it's not because anybody wanted to be nice to me. It was because after a very intense game of Uno, me and Siglowski got to fighting each other. I think he called me a fairy or something, and I said something to him, and we got to... And now Siglowski was a lot smaller than me, so I had the power on him, but he was a feisty little bastard because he was a wrestler. So where I was hitting him, he ended up doing a wrestle move on me. When he did, it re-aggravated my knee, and it just twisted again, and I fell straight to the ground. And I was like, God dang it, my knee, and it swelled up again. So I didn't end up going on that mission thanks to Uno. So they go down.
Remember the face block part I remembered alluded to earlier? The Siglowski face block? Yeah.
Yeah.
Came into effect that night as well.
So after our game, I ended up not going on the mission. So they're down there south, and they're probably, I think, heading back up. And it was me and a couple other guys that day. I think Hurd might have been back there with me. Yeah, Hurd had stayed back at mission, and maybe Glover. And they had me in there, and Glover was trying to map out some different points with, tacks on a map or something like that. I was like, Glover, I don't care. We've been here this long, and we've been going off of, winging a prayer. I don't care, because that's just how he was. And we finally get this message back that one of our convoys had been attacked, and we had not had this happen yet. No IEDs, nothing. So we were all like, okay, well, we're kind of freaking out, thinking there's one of our guys coming up north. And I got to thinking, I was like, well, that doesn't really make a lot of sense, because at this time of the day, getting this message this early, we don't get messed with in the South. We're pretty cool down there. We buy booze from them.
Yeah, we called it Disneyland.
Yeah. So I was saying, well, first platoon just left. Well, that's got Settlefinheims in it, and I kind of got a weird feeling in my stomach. And so I think either Hurd or Glove Nuts, one of the two, said something. It was such and such had gotten hit and blah, blah, blah. And I still had a weird feeling. I was like, nah, it just doesn't sound right or whatever. And come to find out it was Himes. And, we had all went to high school with him and played football. And I was like, daggone. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where he was. I didn't know, what his condition was. But I said, I'm going to go call his mom. And, of course, everybody was against that. And this lieutenant we talked about earlier was very much against that. And I was like, I don't care what you think. I'm not going to let some douchebag prick at Fort Pickett in an office call his mom instead of me. She should hear it from one of us. And so I give her a call, and I, told her about it. That was one of the hardest moments of my life, because I didn't know if he was alive or anything. And I just kept saying, he's good, I promise, he's good. And so we ended up that night. So that happens during the day. And that night, I'm pretty sure was the first night we started getting mortared too.
Yeah, and it was the next. We came home that evening.
So yeah, it was that evening we started getting. Yes,
we came home from Kuwait the night that happened.
Or Nasiriyah.
Yeah, Nasiriyah the night.
You didn't get lucky enough to go back to Kuwait.
No,
Come on.
True, that's a true story. But the next day, you, me, and Hurd and the CO drove back to Dogwood to see him.
Yeah, so when I was in the phone tent calling his mom, and I passed everybody, I'm going, and our lieutenant, who I'm not going to mention, he's kind of looking at me like, you don't need to be doing this, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of just looked up and I was telling her, I said, look, he's at Dogwood. I do know that much. And tomorrow, I promise you, we're going to go down there and see him and we'll let you know how it is. And I was on a busted knee. And she was there looking at me like, you ain't going, you ain't doing nothing like that. And sure enough, they got back that evening, and that's the first night we started getting mortared. It's also the first night that we actually got any kind of food that wasn't chicken and rice or chicken and potatoes, because our quote-unquote cooks, who all they had to do was drive to the center of post and get the food, just decided to go get chicken every single night because it was the shortest line. We actually got hamburgers and hot dogs for July 4th, so that was nice right before the fireworks started. And then the mortars started coming. And I remember one of our 3rd Platoon former Marines, I won't mention his name either, but to be as tough as he was supposed to be, when the mortars started dropping, he started running and screaming like a child into the bunkers and hiding out under there and quivering and crying. And I was out there with Skeens and Sergeant Davis on the trailer line right there, and they started landing. We were just all looking at each other, just laughing. I'm like, what the hell are we going to do?
I'd have been with him in a damn bunker.
And they came in, and that night on July 4th, I'm pretty sure that's the night that hit the medical tent too, correct?
I believe so.
And it killed like 3 and injured 14. It hit an actual triage tent, so people that already screwed up in there,
Dang,
then get a mortar landed on top of them.
We got shelled. Eventually, it got to the point that we got shelled so often. Most of the time it was at night. Occasionally, we would get shelled during the day. And if it didn't land close enough to you, you didn't even stop what you were doing. Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember one time I watched 3 rockets come in, and they were probably a football field away. Bam, 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 one after another, right after each other. And I'm like, cool. That was pretty neat. Watching those things. It landed in the middle of nowhere. It didn't hurt anybody. It was cool watching them come in.
There's almost some logic. Lightning don't strike twice in the same place. I would probably just go where that border just blew up and stay in them. I mean, odds are that's the safest place.
Well, the most ludicrous weapon we got attacked with was a frog. and I don't know what the acronym stands for, but it's a really old Soviet surface-to-surface missile. I mean, we're talking like 1960s technology. And we passed this daggone thing every day we went on a mission down to Toledo. Every day we passed this thing. And we passed it coming north. It was probably about, 15, 20 miles south of Anaconda, sitting on the side of the road, on the vehicle that towed it, just sitting there on the side of the road. We passed it. Everybody's assuming that the thing doesn't work. Were we wrong?
Come to find out, that's what was attacking y'all.
Well, it was they could only use it once because it was a big weapon. But I don't know if you're old enough to remember the rocket they used to have in Wasena Park downtown.
Yeah,
yes.
I remember that.
That's about how big around that day. It wasn't that long, but that's about how big around that stupid thing was. And they fired that at us one day. And it's like, where the hell did this thing come from? And then go down the road the next day, and that thing's gone. Oh, now we know. Okay, I got it now.
Maybe we should have just disabled that thing.
I can't tell you how many times I thought about shooting at it, going by. But it's like, oh, well, I guess I don't want to get in trouble for shooting at things I'm not supposed to shoot at. And with my luck, I'd have probably ignited the daggone thing and blown up half our convoy. But,
yeah, it was that whole July 4th weekend. We got mortared, and I remember people losing up because that was the first time it had happened. People were, all right, this is wartime now, and a couple of us were over there in the motor pool, kind of laughing about it, and we're hunkered down, of course, behind the tires, but like, all right, it's game time, and after that, it was
Got
pretty
some
much
fireworks on 4th of July, didn't you?
Yeah, it was pretty much every single night for the next 6 months after that. I remember one time we were all sitting in the motor pool. You talk about the rare times that happened during the day. Everybody was sitting out there in the motor pool, and they were on the trailers doing some work and stuff like that. And there's about 10 or 15 people out there. And a mortar, you could see it come through the sky and coming down, and everybody in the motor pool just looking at it like, like, doo. And it landed right there in the middle of the damn trailers and never exploded.
Yep.
It just sit there, and then they walked around it,
couldn't
and they put a bunch of sandbags around it or whatever to mark it, and they were trying to figure out, well, and this is the most Appalachian redneck thing ever. They were like, all right, what we're going to do now, because this is unexploded ordnance, we got to be able to detonate it because it's still dangerous, but we can't have it here in the motor pool or anything like that. What are we going to do to it? So I'm pretty sure they tied it to a rope and a chain and then to the end of a Humvee and started just driving it down.
What could possibly go wrong?
Speaking of stupid stuff with explosive, wasn't it Smallwood that threw the grenade into the fire?
Somebody tell me about this, because I don't remember.
I didn't hear that.
I was
story.
there that day. We were sitting there.
Well, wait a minute. Did the thing blow up behind the damn Humvee?
Oh, I don't.
I don't think so. I think they
think
just.
so.
I think they
it was
just.
a dud.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They just drug it out there long enough and never exploded, and they were like,
Now-
all right, somebody just picked it up and threw it on the outside of
At
the wire.
one time, I had a video of. I know the night I was out on the OP and the 3 rounds came in and they detonated on both sides of the trailer I was on, and the one landed between the trucks and the tent, and our friend found it the next morning loading the trucks.
Yeah.
And we were all walking right by it, but it was dark and couldn't see it. Now, EOD came out and blew that one in place after the convoy had pulled. I didn't have to go on that mission because I'd been on the OP all night. But I had a video with that at one time. I don't know whatever happened to it. But that was pretty cool, and that blew up.
But somebody threw a grenade into the fire. That's genius, right?
That is
God.
genius.
Oh,
That's
this was
our
our
platoon
platoon
sergeant.
sergeant, the
Our
guy who
platoon
was leading
sergeant.
the way,
Yeah.
second in command,
So
essentially.
Yankee
we're-
Doodle Dandy.
First
We're
step
getting
on
ready
that.
to move from Mortar Alley, which is where we lived, is what we called it, Mortar Alley. And we're getting ready to move to the center of base because they thought that it was too dangerous after how many months to live there? So,
It was right before Christmas.
yeah.
so-
So
Merry Christmas.
July to Christmas.
You don't
We've been
get
there
blown
forever.
up.
So we had already built our own shitters. We had a bunch of carpenters. We built our own shitters and showers and all that. And they're like, well, what do we do with these? You got to tear them down. So we decided to make this big bonfire. Anything we didn't need to move to the middle of base, we threw it in this big bonfire. So we're all standing around. We're just burning shit, burning wood. This dumbass comes up with a fucking Mark 19 round in his hand
I do
and
remember this.
chucks it into the fucking fire. I mean, you should have seen. It's like freaking cockroaches when the lights get cut on.
Oh, yeah.
Shoo! Everybody disappeared. This dumbass is still standing next to the fire, waiting for it to go off.
Did it go off?
Nah, not that I know of. I was too busy running.
Yeah, I would have took my chances. I'm out.
I don't know. I mean, he's still with us, so I don't know. But God,
Imagine all the ordnance people walk up over there in Iraq and find leftover.
oh yeah.
Oh, they're still finding ordnance in Europe from World War II and World War One.
They're still
so,
finding unexploded Civil War ordnance.
Some
Here in
people
the
played
States
football with the
on
ordnance.
battlefields.
do what?
I said some people played football with the ordnance.
Guilty. We don't have to go there. We can if you want to.
So I got to think, Billy, did you ever get your ACL fixed?
Yeah. 4 years after it happened, thanks to the government. So for any of you out there who champion socialized health care, just know that if you tear your ACL in your knee, you might take 4 years to finally get it fixed because every single doctor you go to is going to tell you it's not what it is. You have to fight that whole battle. But yes, in May of 2007, I finally got it fixed.
I was sitting here thinking, it was like Billy ended up with the damn Purple Heart for stepping out of a truck and twisting his ankle and getting his ass kicked in Uno.
You got it fixed in 2007.
Yeah.
Man, that's the second time I was going on my second deployment then.
Yeah.
It took that long for them to fix it?
Look, I didn't get any Purple Hearts because I was invincible. But if you were hanging around me, then you were sure as hell going to get a Purple
Yeah,
Heart.
Billy was a mortar magnet.
I was an everything magnet. Let's see, Purdue was my battle buddy, and he broke his arm. And got sent home.
Either this week or last week, because it showed up on my
Memories.
memories, on Facebook or something like that. The picture of him standing there with his arm in a cast before they flew him out to Germany.
Yeah.
It was either this week or last week.
Yeah, he got sent out through the hottest part of the summer. So he's my battle buddy, and he get his arm snapped in half. Willie P rides with me and gets shot.
Oh, he was
Siggy watches a movie with me, and a mortar hits him. Me and Bricky are riding together, and the freaking United States Army decides to start shooting at us. I mean, it doesn't matter. No, that was Bateman. Bricky was riding with me, and we got shot at by the villagers in that town. I mean, if you were around me, good chance you were going to get messed up. Not me, but you definitely. So, it was quite a situation.
You were
for
the
me.
mortar magnet.
I was. And that probably made it even more difficult, for part of this Independence Day in Iraq in 2003. So, Himes gets blown up, and I think it was him and Blevins, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was Blevins. Yeah.
Fortunately for them, he had his Kevlar jacket on, unlike we would have had, because he was actually practicing safety.
He had the Vietnam flag jacket on, didn't he?
Yeah.
We didn't have the good stuff yet.
No. It's
It was like a Vietnam era flak jacket.
That's probably good stuff then, really.
I mean, I tell you what, it did its job with him. Well,
His face when we finally saw him in the hospital. I mean, he could talk, or he was articulate and everything, but his face looked like somebody had shot him with a shotgun.
yeah.
Where the asphalt and dirt had exploded.
Oh, and just
and
scarred
it
him.
just hit him in the face.
But the Kevlar jacket, everything down here, all of his internal area, not a scratch on it or anything. So he's doing, and that's kind of what happened with us is, that next day they said, all right, we're going to go down there and check out on him. And I told them, I said, well, I'm going. They said, man, your knee is messed up. There ain't no way. I said, well, you put me in the middle somewhere and give me a gun, and that's what we'll do. So you, me, and Bird, we all got in a truck. And one of y'all was out of the turret, one of y'all was driving, and I was in the passenger seat with my weapon out the window. And for whatever reason, to go back to Dogwood this day, why? I think because our captain was leading the way.
Yes.
And this is one of the few times he actually went outside the wire, because you got to go down there to get medals for talking to your soldiers. They decided to take the route that we never, ever, ever take because we're smart enough to know not to go that way.
Right
So
through the middle
normally,
of Baghdad.
yeah, we just take the bypass around. We're like, you go down to Danville, you take 29, you go around the city if you ain't got to go into it.
Yeah.
He was like, we're just going to go 29 business and go right through the middle of the damn city. So you're talking about one of the most dangerous roads in Iraq. And there's only 4 vehicles or 3.
There
We
were
didn't
3
have a
of
lot.
us.
Yeah, three vehicles surrounded by an entire city.
So y'all just wasn't thinking straight.
No, y'all to it. We were thinking
Oh, the
straight.
captain.
Because we were thinking, what the hell is he doing going this way? And clearly I guess he was just reading his map or something. Hey, man, this might be the best way to go. Not bothering to ask us who had been that way 1,000 times, whether it was,
One of the big problems that we had over there was there are only so many roads in Iraq. So it's not like they don't know where we're going to be. So it was very easy for them to set up ambushes for us, IEDs or...
Sounds to me like the ultimate problem is the officers didn't know what the hell they were doing.
well, that's typical for the military in general.
You just pretty much hit the nail on the head.
But, my observation is that the company grade officers and below were not afraid to use initiative to do what needed to be done to save lives. But once you make major and it's going to be a career, and typically when you're a major, you're a battalion staff and above. It doesn't matter how stupid the order is. Boy, buddy, we're going to follow that order. I mean, it doesn't matter how many people I get killed because this is a stupid order. By God, that's what we're going to do. When it gets down to the company level and the company commanders and the platoon commanders, yeah, fuck that shit. Pardon my French.
We cuss on here. It's okay.
You just call somebody to run out of the road when they're listening to this.
We made the calls on the road when we needed to do what we had to do. And we never hurt anybody we shouldn't have hurt. And we never went out of our way to hurt anybody. But if we needed to do something to protect ourselves, we did it.
You had to. It was give or take. Clearing barrels.
Yeah, when he came in the South Gate, and we had... Okay.
Yeah.
And when you came in the South Gate, whenever you come on post, you go into a chow hall or something, you have to clear your weapons, right? Because you go outside the gate, your weapon's hot. You come inside, you can't carry around a loaded weapon. It's just not safe. So you come on post, you have a clearing barrel, which you bring your weapon up to the clearing barrel, you clear it, which means you take the ammo out of it, put the barrel of your weapon down into the barrel, pull the trigger to make sure
Dry fire it.
you dry fire it. Okay, then you're good to go. Well, these people had gotten on my last nerve. We were coming up there one time, and I know Billy was talking to you earlier about, they fussing at us because we were coming up to the south gate and we didn't have our blouses on. And about a week or two before the incident I'm about to describe happened, we got up there and they wouldn't let us in the south gate because the first two trucks, the people didn't have their blouses on, right? That's what they call your top. And sitting in front of us was a Fox NBC vehicle with an RPG sticking out of the back of it that they just attacked on the road that we're sitting on.
Yeah.
But they won't let us in the gate because we're not dressed properly. That's how ludicrous these active duty pukes were, right? So fast forward a couple weeks, and we're dealing with this lunacy on a daily basis. We come in, and they moved the clearing barrels, and you came in and you drove down a road, and in this nice little pretty spot where you pulled in, and they had all these brand new traffic cones, and at the end of the traffic cones, they had two barrels, so you could two people could clear their weapons at the same time. And it had been a long day. We've probably been on the road 14 hours that day or something, and I was not in the best of moods. And I get up to this place, and what do I see? This staff sergeant in a brand spanking new, clean press, starched friggin' uniform. Looks like he just got out of the shower, sitting there at this friggin' clearing barrel point with all these brand spanking new traffic cones so that we can drive up to these, clearing barrels, right? Not my best day. I don't know if I'm really proud of this or not, but I may have hit every single one of those traffic cones with every wheel on my truck and trailer on my way to the clearing barrels. And I may not have even got out of my truck when I cleared my weapon going through the point that day.
I did that.
And I just kept on going.
I don't think people can quite appreciate the dysfunction.
Yeah, really? We've been in the truck all day long, and this is what we come back to, the idiocy. And every time, every time I saw somebody discharge a weapon into one of those barrels, the entire time we were overseas, it was a friggin' officer. It wasn't one of the enlisted people. We knew how to handle weapons.
That shot a live round into the clearing barrel.
Yeah, because they didn't know how to clear their weapons.
Y'all would have probably gotten in trouble if you did that.
We would have gotten in trouble for it.
Absolutely.
Negligent discharge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Every single time. I saw about 3 of them in the year we were over there. Every single time it was an officer.
It kind of reminds me of, and Bird, you might have told this to me back then, 20-some years ago, but essentially, during World War II, the reason that we were so successful against the Germans was because the Germans had studied our military doctrine so much and read in all of our military manuals. Yet, when we would go into battle, essentially the officers of Germany would say, well, the American troops, they don't actually follow by their own guidelines. They don't even read the manuals, and they just do whatever they want to do. And the complete chaos is the reason that we ended up beating the Germans, because nobody actually followed the rules and did what they were supposed to do. So the Germans were dumbfounded by it.
That's exactly right. They said the Americans don't even follow their own friggin' doctrines.
You have you ever read? I read some of this, so I don't. It was military doctrine by von Clausewitz.
Mm-hmm.
On war, and he
said... Is that the guy that's on your Facebook profile all the time arguing with me?
No, that's Alexander. He's a nice guy.
Yeah.
He is a nice guy.
Oh, I can tell.
We disagree politically, but he's a nice
His name sounded familiar, like von Clausewitz.
Well, I remember von Clausewitz said, war is a continuation of politics by other means.
That's correct.
And this synopsis of what he meant by that was the soldier most likely to win the war is the one who separates himself from the politics and does whatever it is to get it, does whatever he has to do to get it done.
That was
And now
essentially
this
us
is
in a nutshell.
now. This doctrine is pre-World War One, if I'm not mistaken. It's some Civil War time frame.
No, it's before that. Clausewitz
Clausewitz before that?
He served in the Napoleonic Wars.
Okay.
But the doctrine's true, and what he's saying is that war is the ultimate diplomacy. When diplomacy fails, ultimately things are decided by war, and that's what he's saying.
Well, even Mao in China says power is derived by the end of a barrel, and yet the Chinese people aren't armed whatsoever. And, of course, we got all these people in this country who scream every day that communist China's the way to go. But even he recognizes it. But
well, ignorance is bliss, isn't it? They don't teach history in school anymore, so, it's easy to brainwash the kids now.
So we apply von Clausewitz to the modern day. Is it stand true? Now, this is something I'm stealing from Crimson Tide here, because they quoted him in that movie. Is it different in the nuclear age? Does that quote still stand true?
Of course, ultimately it is.
Well, I mean, the reason I say that is because what they surmised for the movie, here we go, Hollywood taking von Clausewitz and taking him out of context, is true enemy can't be destroyed in the nuclear age.
That's not true at all.
That their thought was that the enemy is war itself.
There's a lot of truth to that statement. If you're fighting a nuclear war, that's definitely true.
Yeah, and I'm talking about the nuclear age, and we're talking about the use of nuclear weapons and the possibility.
We've lived in a nuclear age for 80 years now, and we haven't fought another nuclear war. So, but we fought many wars in that time frame. So, just
the existence. They're the people that have them or know about. I mean, they're realistic enough to know that there's no end. The end is. It's quite a complex doctrine or theory. There, you elaborate a lot on it.
I don't want to get too deep into the weeds with that. I'm not going to say that you can win a nuclear war, because nobody would win in a nuclear war. However, I don't know if you saw any of the movies that they came out with in the 80s, A Day After Tomorrow and things like that.
Yeah.
And the nuclear winters and things they portrayed. I don't think, knowing what we know now about nuclear fallout and stuff, I don't think it would be as drastic to the world as those movies portrayed.
Oh, I'm way ahead of you on that one. I don't think nuclear bombs are as destructive as, because they tell us that if we had nuclear war, then 10,000 years we would be unsustainable and there'd be this nuclear winter and stuff. Like, dude, there's shit growing in Chernobyl right now. There's people living in Chernobyl. There's animals, plant life. I mean,
basically, if you're far enough away from an explosion to survive the explosion, if you stay underground, shielded from the nuclear radiation for about 2 weeks, you can come above ground and stay above ground for several hours a day and not get lethal doses of radiation. That's the reality of it. Now, everything that was above ground, the animals, the crops, everything that was there is going to die.
Yeah.
The radiation's going to kill it. And that's going to do drastic things to the society, but, well,
the real danger in any type of explosion was just like the Tsar bomb that Russia, that when they came out with those, literally it blew the tops off the atmosphere. All the force went so high that the clouds and the surface dust was actually going up into the atmosphere. Then you cloud the atmosphere with it, and then what do you cause there?
Well,
but again, it's unproven. How does this? It's just theory. Then
most people, in the 1944 World War II, right? The winter of 1944 was one of the harshest winters of the century, right?
Wasn't that Bastogne?
Yeah, and the reason for that wasn't nuclear weapons. The reason for that was the dust in the atmosphere, right? And that's basically what we're talking about with a nuclear winter. Nuclear explosions kicking stuff up into the atmosphere.
But it's just theory. I mean, unfortunately, it's never been applied.
But you know what that dust came from in 1944? tank battles in the Ukraine and on the plains and steppes of Russia between the German army and the Russian army. They were so big and so massive, they threw up so much dust into the atmosphere, and it actually lowered the Earth's temperature. But there's so much energy and dust released, by volcanoes yearly. It dwarfs what mankind does. And people, we're getting off subject
No,
here.
I don't think so. I think it's a cool. So I mean,
Yeah, it's very. It's as informative.
I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
If you're uninformed, it's easy to scare people. And that's what all of these things are designed to do, is to scare people. It's easy to control people when they're scared.
Yeah, I mean, it is. If you look at the, that is the theory. If we were to go to war and we were to be shooting back and forth, nuclear fallout would be from what we throw up in the atmosphere and how it would change temperatures.
Right. And I am in no way espousing ever doing that.
Yeah,
I don't ever want to see another war fought on this planet ever.
Agreed.
That should always.
That should be everybody's main optic.
That should always be the last resort. Always be the last resort. Nothing good ever comes of war. However, when there's evil in the world, sometimes you have to fight wars.
Yeah.
Look what's going on in the Ukraine right now. There's no way not to fight that war. Now, we're not fighting the war. The Ukrainians are fighting that war. But if you're a Ukrainian, you have to fight that war. There's no way not to fight that war. Sometimes war comes to you, and you have to play the hand you're dealt.
I'd say the Ukrainians have done a pretty good job considering.
The media is reporting that they're doing a good job. I don't think they're doing as good.
No, I'm saying they're not done already. They haven't been took over. I think that's a pretty good job to say.
No,
I don't think Putin has taken over what he needs to take over.
I don't think he has any
desire to take over the rest of it.
I think
this
it's
is
strategic.
a very complicated situation. It's not just as black and white as Ukraine versus Russia, us versus them.
It's not. I totally agree.
The Russians, in my opinion, have a legitimate gripe. If the Russians were moving in and putting these weapon systems on the Mexican or Canadian border, and they were standing outside of us, I'm pretty sure we would have something to say about it as well.
Well,
it's a lot. I'm just saying it's a lot.
It's a prickly pear, as Simon would say.
Putin's whole, his whole heartburn about this whole thing was when he signed the treaty. Not him, but when the prior Soviet Union, signed the treaty disarming the Ukraine. I believe it was in 1994, taking the nukes from the Ukraine. I think France, the United Kingdom, the United States, Russia were all signatories to that treaty. And the treaty said that Russia would not invade the Ukraine and that NATO would not expand.
Yes.
George Bush said himself after the Soviet Union fell that NATO would not expand one more inch towards Russia.
No. The treaty said Germany. That's all the treaty specified was Germany.
But Bush said himself it would not go an inch closer to Russia. That's what he said. Whether the treaty said it or not, that was his words.
Well, you sign a contract, what you got to abide by the terms of the contract. The treaty specifically says Germany. It doesn't say a daggone thing about Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, Lithuania, Estonia, Sweden, Finland.
But it said it would not go further than Germany. Correct?
Well, the Russians broke the treaty, didn't they? They invaded Georgia. They invaded the Ukraine.
But we also broke the treaty as well by allowing Latvia and some of those Croatia countries to come into the
They were not part of the
NATO.
treaty.
Well, this is above my pay grade, so I'm going to go ahead and take your word
The
for it.
treaty deals with Germany. It doesn't deal with any of the other countries.
So basically, though, we're talking semantics, though.
We are.
That's what I was kind of
semantics.
thinking. It was sort of semantical at that point.
It's semantics. I still firmly believe that Putin has a legitimate gripe here. And
Now-
we also don't need to be in the middle of this And it's my personal opinion that all Ukraine really is a giant money laundering organization.
It's a criminal enterprise.
Yeah, we're sending money over there. It's
Yeah.
getting laundered out, and it's probably getting back into the hands of our
it's-
politicians. I
It's a mob state.
I could
That's
be
all it is.
wrong. There are, I can't remember the guy's name or what position he holds in the government, but if I'm not mistaken, here in the last couple of years, it's been proven that his son was working for an energy board in Ukraine and getting a lot of kickbacks, and there were quid pro quos and things like that. If anybody can help me out,
Help with
Son of a bitch.
what is the guy's name?
Oh, he wrecked a bicycle a couple weeks
He
ago.
did, God, but for the life of me, I can't remember. There's something about him. He can't complete a complete. He
You
can't
know,
complete a
Boris-
sentence.
and if you don't fire this prosecutor, you're not getting this $1 billion. That guy.
Yeah, he did a quid pro quo.
Son of a bitch. They fired
But
the guy.
the weird part is the guy before him, they accused him of doing a quid pro quo, even though there was no evidence to state that. And we wasted millions of taxpayer dollars on
Well,
investigating.
it probably was a quid pro quo, but what's it really friggin' matter?
But
It's politics and business combined.
Fair
Yeah.
enough, and I would say that as well.
But one's not getting treated the same as the other.
But when the other one come out
hypocrisy.
and said it on TV, where you can find the video where he said, "Hey man, I told that Ukrainian prosecutor if they didn't drop the charges, we weren't going to give him that aid." And 8 hours later,
That's a quid pro quo.
That was a quid pro quo. Now he did that. This was the vice president at the time. Got caught on camera doing it. Now the president after that wasn't caught on camera doing that, but they accused him. It's basically projection, essentially. So that's why I don't really get involved in the whole Russia-Ukraine thing. I don't think we need to be there. I don't think we need to be sending them weapons.
I'm not even espousing us being there. I'm just stating. I was using that as an example.
It's a prickly
of
pear.
a country that has evil thrust upon them.
Yeah.
And they have no choice but to fight.
Well, they're evil themselves. They just have a little bit more, maybe. I mean, the Azov Battalion, I mean, there's literally Nazis.
Well,
I mean,
when you look at Putin though, and his paranoia, you would be an absolute madman to invade Russia.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll tell you how stupid Putin is and how dumb his generals were. They obviously are not students of history. What defeated Napoleon's invasion of Russia?
Oh, God.
the winner?
General Winter, right? What defeated Hitler's invasion of Russia? General Winter, General Mudge, right? When does Putin invade the Ukraine? In the middle of winter, in the middle of the muddy season.
Yeah.
And he's surprised when he gets his ass kicked. Hello, McFly. Read your history.
Well, they need a. I mean, you just ain't got a good Russian president like Boris Buy Me a Drink Yeltsin. Yeah. He was a great president. Just by his name. I don't even remember what he done. I just remember he was a drunk, and that's why he was great.
Well, all Russians.
I'm not thrilled with our military leadership now either.
I'm far from
We
it.
got a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff that should be brought up on charges of treason. I mean, he admitted as much.
Yeah.
You do not talk to the head of a foreign military and say, we're going to talk to you, if this president decides to do something. That's treasonous.
Yeah.
That's a definition of treason.
Well, not to mention that other, I can't remember if he's a DOD official or whatever he was, but essentially he was briefing the former president on the number of troops that were deployed to Syria.
And lied.
And lied about it. He told our president that we did not have any more troops in Syria, that had all been pulled out, and lied about it. There were still about 1,200 troops left there. And then a few years later, after the new administration came in, went on CNN essentially, or one of those stations,
Admitted it.
and bragged about it. Wrote a book about it.
It would be the same fat
Wrote a book
SOB.
about it.
Yes.
I mean, that is pure treason right there. You lied to the sitting president and the American people about soldiers being in the country we didn't want to be in the first place, and then have the audacity to go on TV and brag about it. No, we need to start sharpening the guillotines. We need to start filling those barrels full of tar and pull the feathers back out. It's about time we're done with this nonsense.
All I can say is that we've got a Justice Department that will not prosecute people of one particular party that commit crimes. And thank the friggin' Lord that man never made it to the Supreme Court. Thank God He's not a justice on the Supreme Court.
Yeah. Talking about Merrick Garland?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
exactly what I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
F you.
I just got to think though. I ponder. Do you think we'll end up in Ukraine before it's all over?
No,
No.
absolutely not.
That's bad
We'll keep-
optics.
We'll keep sending guns. We'll keep sending money.
Yeah,
I'd say it's
they'll
bad.
keep sending $80 billion for $40 billion worth of weapons, and that $40 other billion will come right back here to the States.
I really think something's wrong with Putin. I think he's sick.
It's
Well,
possible.
I also think. Well, it's a legacy thing for him.
That's what I think.
It's a legacy thing.
I think he's trying to
If he's sick and he's dying, this would be his lasting legacy is to try to
Reunite that
remake
part
the
of Ukraine.
USSR.
I think
Soviet
it's
Union.
something along those lines with him because it doesn't make sense otherwise.
But it does. I have been looking.
Well, our side doesn't make sense anyway. I mean, he does not even a legacy. The man can't even complete a sentence.
well,
He's
I mean, it's a
senile,
perfect
so-
opportunity because we have somebody in the White House that is just weak,
There's
and
a guy-
that's the nicest way I can put it.
There's a guy in Florida I really like pretty well.
Yeah, me too. my older brother who lives in Florida really hates it when I suggest that because he doesn't want to lose him as governor.
Yeah, they don't want to. I think we got bigger problems though. We got a bigger job for him.
As a libertarian, I think Dave Smith will probably end up being the best candidate as long as he can get on the stage
Well-
and debate those people, which they won't allow him to do. That being said, in my reality, between Trump and DeSantis, I would prefer Trump. That being said, is because Trump has been scorned and he has seen, and if it's a legitimate situation that we have going, and this is not all just puppetry going on, then he is going to go back in with a head full of steam and he's not going to put up with the crap this time.
Well, that's
I think Trump tried to play by the rules the last time. If this is all not convoluted, he played by the rules and found out that the rules don't really care and they're going to do what they're going to do. So if he gets his second opportunity, I think day one he's going to come in there. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. I don't think DeSantis would rock the boat quite like that. Now, get 4 more years of Trump, and then after that, maybe 8 years of DeSantis. We could go with that, but
I think DeSantis has to be Trump's running mate though.
they're two
I don't-
alpha
I don't
males. They're
think-
two alpha males.
I don't know. I just
one of the things since the
Trump-
Dobbs decision, you've got all these protesters and a potential assassin, right outside the justices' homes,
yeah.
and which is against federal law. And again, the Department of Justice is not doing anything to address
Nothing.
the situation. The state of Virginia is not doing anything about it. The state of Maryland's not doing anything about it. I'm just thinking out loud here. The United States Marshal Service are officers of the court. Why didn't the Supreme Court order the marshals to protect their houses
So
if the Justice
one of the-
Department doesn't do it?
Was it actually the Democratic? No, it wasn't. I didn't say it was a Democratic senator suggested they have military security, but it had to. It may have been Mitch McConnell. Actually, I can't remember which one. That was a tragic. That was that. Yeah.
Well, everybody screams about January 6th, but nobody wants to talk about May 29th when, like 100 officers or something were injured and the church was firebombed in D.C. and the president was forced to move to his bunker. One of the White House guard shacks were set on fire. That's not an insurrection. But January 6th, for the progressives in this country who think we're the most gun-crazy nuts in the entire world, to all show up to January 6th unarmed just doesn't make a lot of sense at all if you're going to overthrow your government.
You can't have a rational conversation with people that aren't
No,
rational.
let's just be honest. That's the rational look at it is if they don't go armed, it's not an insurrection. It's a bunch of people taking selfies.
I have to think, though, if that same group of people were armed the way they think you and his gun-ho Yankee Doodle Dandy, they would have took over the entire Capitol building and it would have
They would have taken over D.C. They wouldn't have taken
Yeah,
over
it would have not
Capitol
ended
building.
there because, hell, a lot of the military is going to get on board with that shit, though.
Yeah. And that's the thing about it.
I got into this argument. It was probably one of these Facebook, Instagram. It was on our Instagram about guns. And
Is that Sergeant Major?
he had
I turned this off.
and I told the boy, I said, the true nature or reason for us to all carry guns is not necessarily for our own protection. It is, but it's protection from your government. We always have the power. And he said, and I knew he was going to come back with this. if the military wants to kill you, they're just going to send missiles and destroy everything you got. And I'm like, let me just point you to Iraq or Afghanistan, to ISIS
or Vietnam
when we were fighting these guys, and you're like, yeah, I agree. The military is powerful against another military, but when you're talking about insurgents, essentially, we become the insurgents then.
Well, for all those dipshits out there that make this argument, when they are saying this, all they are essentially doing is they are putting up all the might of the United States military versus the civilians in this country. And okay, if you're going to do that and they're going to use all their might, yes, we are decimated within a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
That being said, what they don't add are the variables such as how many of the military are going to desert and turn.
Yeah,
take those weapons with them, destroy that equipment out the door, whatever they have to do, destroy drones,
kill their own families.
Yeah, exactly. So you also got to take into effect that. Can you name me a single war throughout history that some other country didn't start sending weapons into? Do you think the Russians or the Chinese wouldn't be sending weapons into this country? Yeah. And I'm talking about the weapons that we can't normally get, like RPGs, surface-to-air missiles, rocket launchers, things like that, would be coming into this country if we were in a civil war by the freaking truckloads, and they would even the playing fields, just like we did the Mujahideen, just like we're doing the Azov Battalion in Ukraine right now, just like we did half the Somalis, just like we did the South Vietnamese. We will go in there. We will, other countries will come in and they will arm the rebels because it's in their best interest that we collapse.
You just have to pray to God that it never comes to that here. I think the other side would like to see that because it would further their goal to bring down this country. I think that's probably
but they're going to be dependent on us.
I think that's what they're poking a bear trying to make that happen. This country survived a lot over the course of our history. We just have to wait till the adults get back in charge, and then we can, bring the full weight of the law and take care of the stuff.
Well, who are the adults we're waiting on? Because if it's the Republicans, those same adults got us in Iraq and Afghanistan 20 years ago. I'm not so keen on them doing the right thing.
Afghanistan was justified
to a degree.
Iraq.
We could have sent in.
Iraq was 20 years late.
We could have sent in a couple. We could have sent in a special forces battalion to Iraq. We had Bin Laden on the run and Al Qaeda within the first 4 weeks of that war. There was no reason to spend 20 years there.
No, I agree.
No reason. We had them on. We could have.
Here's the thing with Iraq, though. Having
they're 10 years late.
Having spent too much of my life in that friggin', sandpit. Iraq was beyond a doubt a state sponsor of terrorism. And you got to think back when this happened. This is right after 9/11. Iraq was sending money to the families of suicide bombers that were killing people in Israel. That is the very definition of state sponsored terrorism.
But that's not what they sold us on, though.
It doesn't matter. Let me explain the history to you. Let me explain the history to you, Billy. Iraq invaded Iran, right?
In the 80s.
Right, when Khomeini took over. And they did that because Khomeini, Iran is primarily a Shia country, right?
Shia Persian.
Right, and Iraq was ruled by Sunnis. They were minority, but they ruled the country.
Yeah.
Well, with all the turmoil in Iran, the Iranian people wanted to take over Iraq. There's a lot of people clamoring for it. So Saddam Hussein took the opportunity of the turmoil with the turnover in government to invade Iran, to eliminate that threat. What happened was a 10-year war. 1 million people died, right? And 1 million people died because they used chemical weapons. And the war ended. He invaded Kuwait. The whole Desert Storm thing happened. The world came together. We kicked him out of Kuwait, sent him back to Iraq, and we destroyed his military. So now he's left in Iraq, right, with a next-door neighbor, Iran, who he invaded, that's several times his country's size, with the military several times his country's size, that could walk into Iraq and take the country over if they wanted to. he had to make the Iranians think he still had chemical weapons. And that's when he got in that cat and mouse game with the UN inspectors and stuff, playing stupid games with them, trying to make the Iranians think he still had the weapons. Now, whether he had the weapons or not is really immaterial to the conversation, because we know for a fact he had the equipment to deliver it, because we found that. We found the shells. He had chemical shells ready to be filled with chemicals to use. But more damning was he had the ability to make the chemicals to put in those shells at any time. The fact that he didn't have friggin' vats full of the chemicals standing by to put in them is immaterial, because in a month or two he could have. So, no, we didn't find mass stockpiles of chemical weapons, but he could have had the chemical weapons. And he played that stupid game with the United Nations weapon inspectors because of what he had done to Iran previously. And they were a state sponsor of terrorism. He got what he had coming to us. Now, should we have stayed there as long as we did? Hell no.
Now that's where I come in. So despite everything you said, and whether it's all accurate or not, I take your word for it. But we all know how history is written by the victors. All that being said, still we shouldn't have been there that long. We could have went in and out of there a whole lot quicker than we did if that was the ultimate goal. At the end of the day, maybe all that was what we were sold on, and it makes sense. But I don't think the powers that be, that was their ultimate goal. I don't think chemical weapons is really what they cared about. I don't think weapons of mass destruction is really what George Bush and Dick Cheney cared about. I think it was all about showing our might, the fact that the Cold War was no longer there, and we needed a new enemy to continue the military-industrial complex stronghold on our country. We needed to create a war. We needed to create a problem. And there it was in Afghanistan. I mean, even General Wesley Clark, we've talked about this before, after 9/11, they already had a plan to invade and take over 7 different countries. How did they know all that stuff that quick?
Well, the military, the Pentagon has plans to invade and take over everybody at any given time. They just have to take.
He was very
specific.
though. General Wesley Clark was very specific about this. It was
they had literally CENTCOM in Tampa. It's not CENTCOM anymore, but CENTCOM literally the year before had war-gamed a war against Iraq. And I say a year before, I'm talking a year before 9/11. It wasn't post 9/11, it was pre 9/11. So they had up-to-date plans literally on hand on how they would do it. I think the problem we got into when we invaded Iraq and Afghanistan is, we got in there, we destroyed the military, and we stayed. That was the problem. We stayed.
It became an occupation instead of a operation.
We never should have gotten into nation building. If somebody wants to fight and they want to get into a situation where you go to war with them, you go in there, you kick their butts, and you leave. You don't rebuild them. We had the Marshall Plan after World War II, and that worked great. The plan with the Japanese worked great. They're great allies now. But those are countries that they were industrial countries before the war.
They had some civility.
Yeah, they had some civility, and they had some infrastructure, right? They were industrial nations before the war. They had something to build on. What does friggin' Iraq have?
Oil?
Nothing. What does friggin' Afghanistan have? Nothing.
Natural resources.
They do have natural resources.
Heroin.
But they don't have. They've never had a central government. They're tribal. There's nothing to build on.
Which makes them an easy target. Which makes them very easy to oppress. To go in there, take all their heroin, and then blame them for it and bomb the shit out of them. Well,
it can if you want to be a Soviet state and play the tribes against each other.
That's what we did.
No, that's not exactly what we did.
Well, we went in and basically confused people with tying the Afghanistan, the Taliban in with the Al-Qaeda. So we sold everybody on going in to fight Al-Qaeda, but essentially stayed there for 20 years fighting back and forth with the Taliban, who back in the mid-90s, we were actually talking with and speaking with. We were bringing them over to the United States to Houston, talking with him about oil lines, pipelines, things like that. When those things fell through, that's when we're like, well, we can go in and, kind of. There's a lot. There's a lot to it. There really is more than we can both sit here and. But
what happened with the Taliban and why they got on the bad side of the United States was after 9/11, they were harboring Al Qaeda, and they gave us the finger when we turn them over, or we're going to freaking come take them, and they gave us the finger, and that's what happened with the Taliban. That's how they became the bad guys in our eyes.
Yeah, but is that really worth sending all of our?
History will tell. I
don't think it at this point in time. It doesn't seem like
it doesn't seem like it to me either.
No, and I mean we can go on about this kind of stuff all day.
I think it was that this was an interesting conversation, and I spurred it with theory, but I kind of liked it.
Yeah, we kind of got off on a tangent.
Oh boy,
there.
We got way off base there.
Well, you know what?
I'm just sitting back listening.
Well,
but it's a conversation. Me being the outsider that wasn't there with people that was. It's just a matter of perspective.
In hindsight, now looking back, 20 years later, were these wars justified? Should we have been there fighting? It's a lot easier to say no now than it was then. Yep. And
I'll even admit that.
I remember then coming back and people asking me that question, and I felt very differently then than I do now. I felt very then passionately, yeah, this was a justified war, but I had a very hard time articulating it then. Even then, I had a hard time articulating it. I could defend it with ideas, but that's all they were. They were ideas because there was no meat. There was no substance. There were no victories. This is what we've done. Look at the results. And
I mean, what does Iraq have today? I mean, is there a central government left?
Oh yeah.
They're a puppet government, essentially.
Well, they're actually very. Remember Sadr, the Sadr Brigade down south? How much they hated us.
Yeah.
He was actually hiding in Iran most of the time we were there. His militias were attacking U.S. soldiers in the south and the Brits and Basra specifically.
Yeah, because the South was super safe for us when we were there.
Yeah.
The Shiite really took care of us. They didn't mess with us too much, and it was right after we left when Sadr started coming into power there in the southern region.
But Sadr did not like Americans at all. Now Sadr's to the point where, okay, Americans are gone by and large, right? We're out of Iraq. Now he's dealing with Iran. He's like, hey, Americans, we don't want you to leave. He's done a 180 because...
Well, that's how it was the entire time. I mean, just in the time we were there, at first it was the Shiites we didn't like, and we were fighting the Sunnis. And then after we left, it was the Sunnis that we were kind of teaming up with to fight the Shiite. And then it was, the Shiite we were teaming up with and the Sunnis to fight Al-Qaeda in Iraq. And I mean, it's just not... I mean, we are funding and supporting so many people out there, essentially, that are fighting each other. And we funded ISIS, and then ISIS broke off and goes into Iraq. And then they're using our weapons against our other weapons that we gave the Iraqi soldiers. And then the Iraqi soldiers, who were poorly trained by us, run in the other direction. And now ISIS gets all these more weapons that we've got. Now we've got to send our own weapons back in again with our own soldiers to overtake the country again. I mean, it's just such freaking ridiculous nonsense. And that, and like Bird alluded to a few minutes ago, and it makes perfect sense, even back then, I was under the, justified. We should have been over there. These people are savages. But the longer I go, the longer I look back on it, the longer I start observing our past history, is most every single war isn't what it's about, what they tell you it's about. And that's why I become so anti-war now, is because I don't want to see our best and our strongest youth in this country continue to go fight banker wars in places that we don't belong in for no reason. And while in the meantime, our country is starting to be overtaken by soft little weenies who are offended by words.
Well, and we've seen what a country at war looks like. And, these people on the left, which I personally think are, like I alluded to earlier, they're poking a bear. They're trying to bring the divide to violence here in this country. I don't want that here. I know what it looks like.
They should not want it either.
If they had any brains, they wouldn't.
Yeah. It's not going to be pretty for their side, because they might be. They are the loud, vocal minority, but when the the rubber hits the road, they're in no position and there will be no more negotiation at that point in time. I mean, they're in a bad spot, but they continue to push us.
And you know, I just pray that it doesn't come to that here. I really do.
Yeah.
Because I don't want that here at all.
And I hate to say this, hopefully it can happen politically before it happens.
Yeah, you know,
Diplomatically.
I fought 2 wars.
What's the word?
Diplomatically.
Diplomatically, yeah. Before it becomes.
You know, when you, as a parent, you fight a war hoping that your children will never have to fight a war. You know, I sure as heck don't want my children fighting a war here.
Yeah. That's my ultimate goal. That's why we do what we do, trying to just bring people together and make people see that our, you know, similarities are more important than our differences. Just the small, simple things like that. Because if we don't figure something out.
Alexander and I, you were talking about her polar opposites politically. And Billy's talking about a guy I talked to on Facebook. And I
rail on this dude all the time, too, by the way.
Politically, we're as far apart as the North and South Pole are. But he and I, you know, we're friends, and we can have civil conversations about all sorts of things. Even politically, we can agree to disagree. We don't always understand each other's positions, but we can agree to disagree. And that's a skill that has been lost on the American public, by and large. You know, you don't have to agree with the other side. But you don't have to be, you know...
vitriol and hatred.
Yes, thank you.
You don't be hateful about it. And we get that. And like I said, it's kind of why we do what we do. We want everybody to, you know, kind of have a voice. Because even the people in this town you won't even think about it got great things to say. And they have great opinions. And at the end of the day, you got to find a way to be able to come
This
together.
is where we end up.
Yeah,
or that's
exactly.
where we end up. Because those are just civil war torn countries, essentially.
And with all that being said, I think we went on
a tangent.
About 2 hours and 15 minutes. Think about it. And here's getting kind of tired. It's been a long weekend.
Yeah.
We have so much more still to talk about Iraq. I mean, we didn't even, I mean, once again, there's an entire year of it over there. We could probably seriously sit here for an entire year and tell stories after stories, and we'll get back to more of them and talk about kind of the things that we dealt with over there. I don't think really people can appreciate. You know, we got our first deployment letters. Most people got a week or 2 weeks advance notice, and these were active duty military people. These everybody in the country gets 2 weeks notice to be able to make your plans and everything.
We got 4 days.
3.
I thought it was 2.
Was it 3?
3. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was walking out of class at Virginia Western Community College. Me and Jager Merritt and Scott Minix. We walked up to CC's Pizza, and I walked in. And I'm like, damn. I was like, they closed, man. I wanted to go in there and get a buffet after class. It was like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. I was like, I just wanted the buffet. Damn, man, this night sucks. I looked down at my phone. Bird calling. What the hell does he want? Answer my phone. Talk to him for a second. Look at my buddies. I'm like, well, damn, this night got even worse. And I guess we're going overseas. And you'd called me and, you just said, hey, we got to go to Fort Pickett for a MOB session. And they kept telling us it was just a training exercise. We were training you in case you ever do get deployed. And then we all knew that was bullshit. And so I get that call from Bird. 3 days later, we're leaving out of the armory here in Rocky Mount. We go down to Fort Pickett. We spend 3 days down there doing this MOB process thing. And at the end of the 3 days, we do a formation, and they say, well, I know some of y'all here have got some kind of ideas about why you're here, and we've been telling y'all, don't worry about that. It's not true. Those are rumors, but yeah, some of y'all are going to Iraq. So,
40 names?
Yeah, there's about 50 of you here. We're going to go ahead and read your names off on the list, because they even came to us the night before and say, well, hypothetically speaking, if anybody was going to go overseas, would you want to volunteer right now so the people who wouldn't want to go, could get taken out? And, of course, all of us looked at each other and we said, well, either we all sign or we don't. We all go together or we don't. And so we all just decided to sign and go together. And we all got sent together.
So y'all had an option to go?
No.
As a group?
No.
Okay, you say sign.
Well, they asked for people to, the night before when it was still a rumor, they asked us, well, hypothetically speaking, and we all decided, well, let's sign our names. We found out later from Sergeant Hurd, he said, well, yeah, He said, it didn't matter if y'all signed your names or not. Y'all were the youngest. You were going, you know, the E4s and stuff and E3s. So, yeah, I mean, we had 3 days. We go down to picket. They tell us in our formation before we leave, and we jump back in buses to come back home. And then we have 3 days from there to get all your stuff together, get all your fares in order, and you're going to Gate City. And that's what we did. And, you know,
my poor wife.
Yeah. So, I mean, for people, I mean, the reason I like telling these stories is because we were not your typical Army unit. We were not your typical National Guard unit. We were shit on and screwed over from day one all the way to day 435 or how many days we were, you know, mobbed or whatever, but we still managed to persevere and to be able to sit here and tell these fun stories.
I think from that day one was when we adapted the mentality. What are they going to do? Send us to Iraq?
Yeah, exactly. And from there on out, we just had nothing but fun with it.
They're like, shit.
I mean, we're talking stripper parties, drunk nights, fish underneath battalion headquarters.
Now you're getting me in trouble. I did not participate in any stripper parties.
No, but you were an accessory to Grand Theft Auto by encouraging her to let me, Siggy, and Bricky take his truck one day. But that's a whole nother story for another show. So we're gonna we're gonna get out of here on that one because we'll come back with these Iraq episodes from time to time because they're a lot of fun. Bodine, Emmett,
thank you all for having me again.
I think it's been
always
fun.
Yes,
I hope everybody's interested because I actually had quite a bit of fun here.
well,
with
Bodine,
this.
I mean, before we get off here, real quick, you watch some of the videos here on the TV and to kind of put it into perspective. I mean, from what you've heard from us, I mean, what would be your thoughts on that?
It's which I've seen some stuff before, but I find everything you say. I mean, I think the base is what gets me. Like seeing them in person, what you described's a little different than what I had pictured. Because like part of me thinks this Hollywood is just in the middle of the desert with a tent propped up everywhere. But essentially, y'all had a lot more infrastructure that y'all built yourselves. It seems like. And it slowly became more and more as the years went on, and being able to visualize that's pretty cool. And this is a weird thing to say, and I'm sure y'all think back on it now. Seeing the mortar rounds, the noises, and seeing the anti-aircraft firing the tracer rounds on video is really cool to see. I know that being there, it's definitely not friggin' cool, but.
Well, in hindsight, for us, it's even cool. It's like, damn,
I think so too. I figured it would be.
Not everybody did. But.
Now, bear in mind, like those ambush videos you're watching those vehicles.
Yeah.
Bear in mind, it's 120 plus degrees. You're wearing body armor. When we were there, we had no AC.
Yeah.
We didn't even have the right body armor. We didn't have armored vehicles, and we didn't have shields on our crew-served weapons on top. I mean, we were literally in Flintstones vehicles compared to what you.
Now hold on. Now let's not completely. We did get air conditioning in our tents, and we were.
No, I'm talking about the vehicles.
Yeah. Well, we got air conditioning in our tents in Balad. I think around the beginning of October when it finally started getting cold.
When it
there.
got rainy. When it got
started
rainy,
getting
it
cold.
turned into a mud pit.
Yeah, and they're like, man, does the heat work on this thing? And you hit that, and like, damn, the heat don't work on it. So now you're cold every single damn night.
You asked for air conditioning, you got it.
Yeah. Thanks, Uncle Sam. But anyway, this has been a great time. I had a blast this weekend hanging out with you fellas. Had a blast tonight talking about this. This episode will be put out tomorrow. I'm going to edit it right now and upload it. Bodine, thanks for coming in and at the last second and helping us out here after Caleb Flores screwed up our plans. And Bird, you and Special Ed as well. Thank y'all both for coming back down today after our night last night to help us out with this because, I really like to put stuff out every single week, and having 2 weeks out of 3 where we missed an episode isn't good optics. So I thought it was a good time, and I can't wait to do it again.
Oh, yeah.
It was a lot of fun. Thanks for having us.
Hopefully next time. And if you've listened this long, Bateman, I think you're still a pussy. But, you're all right still. If you come and apologize to me, I'll let you come on the show sometime and actually add me back to Facebook since you deleted me. But I don't know if he'll make it this far. I would have him back down here. I still love him, but
we love you, brother.
But he still pisses me off. And hopefully, like I said, next time we can get Siggy down here or Dick Purdue or somebody like that to have a little bit.
We do need to have Lindsay on.
Yeah.
He's still in. So
got to get your daddy on here.
Problematic.
Oh, that's right. He can't because he's okay. I'm sorry.
We could get him in a lot of trouble.
I forget that he's still in though because he's.
As soon as he's out, though.
As
You
soon
know
as
one
he's
story I thought
since
of?
he's moving up there in the officer ranks too.
Yeah.
We were talking about this last night with
Lindsay's
him
an
moving
officer.
up. Him walking out of the chow hall and calling that Lieutenant Colonel Hoss. He walked right by. I was like, "What's up, Hoss?" He's like, "What the fuck did you just call me?" And now
All
he's up there in the ranks.
Can we end on that note?
Yeah. I will blackmail Lindsey Purdue. He will be on the show the day he gets out of the military. Because if he doesn't come on here, I'm showing his wife a video of him at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and a couple of the videos of him in Iraq. So just food for thought. We'll get him on here at some point in time. We got so many good, and there's 150 of us that went over there. I'd say probably maybe about 100 are worth talking to. So we've got so many different people to come in and tell different perspectives. So anytime you see one of these Iraq episodes pop up, listen to it. It's a blast. And I meant to tell y'all this earlier before we get off here. The last episode we did was by far our most successful Zoom episode we've ever had as far as downloads and things are concerned. And actually, to this point in time, I'm pretty sure it's one of the top 5 to top 10 most listened to episodes we've ever had. That was just a random Zoom one we did.
Yeah, it's fun.
A lot of people listened to that, and a lot of people gave good feedback. So I appreciate y'all showing up that night, and hopefully this one will be another one. And
With that,
Definitely come
we'll
back
catch y'all
whenever.
next time.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.